I'm Tara.
I'm Ryan.
We love Disney movies.
So we decided to watch them all, from Snow White
to Frozen 2 and beyond. Each episode will watch a different Walt Disney Animated Studios film and tell you all about it.
Did we like it? Does it hold up? Who's our favorite hero?
Or villain.
We'll give you history and fun facts about each movie.
And sometimes we'll invite our friends to watch along with us.
So put on your tiara
Or your evil crown.
and join us on our adventure.
This is Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries. Hello, listeners. We are back, and we have another fantastic episode today. We are talking about Treasure Planet, and we have a very special guest.
I will say I think of this every time you start a podcast, because you always go, we have another fantastic episode today. And I'm like, we haven't recorded this yet. You're really, setting the bar high.
I guess so. I just get excited. And we've got a guest, and you totally cut him off. I was, ready to introduce the guest.
I think Tara's vote of confidence is perfectly suited. This is going to be an exceptional, exciting episode. Okay, Ryan?
Thank you so much, Travis.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello,
Thank
Travis.
Travis
I was thinking about this part. We've known each other for 20 years at this point, haven't we?
I mean, more or less. At this point in our lives, what's a year or two? It's 20 years.
Because we were in Theta. Did you go all the way through Theta Tau?
No.
No, you dropped before, because I think you changed majors.
Yeah. I got in a little bit of a tiff with the environmental engineering department. So yes, I did.
Okay.
Fall of my senior year, I did switch majors.
Okay.
Theta Tau was a
engineering fraternity.
Thank you.
I was Travis's pledge master, and probably the most ill-prepared of let me explain to you how this all works. I just come to be like, what are we doing today?
Yeah.
And then Travis and I traveled to Australia together. I know we talked a little bit about that on the Rescuers Down Under
What a good
episode.
movie. What a good
Right?
movie.
Yeah.
That was go back and listen to our Rescuers Down Under episode.
It's a really good
but It was
episode.
very surprising. I was like, yeah, this is kind of a B-level movie. And maybe it still is, but to me, I really enjoyed the heck out of that episode. But then we both now kind of met up again in Austin when we decided to go to a local gaming bar that was having...
rekindled your friendship.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was having D&D
over
night.
dice and character sheets.
Yes. And so we've been hanging out ever since. And Travis has since met my lovely wife, Tara.
And now likes me better than Ryan.
I mean, some days, yeah, for
That
sure.
feels like the trajectory for a lot of my friends. It's kind of that's the ultimate goal is...
But it's a backwards compliment to you, though, Ryan.
Yes.
Well done.
I am the yellow brick road to the Emerald City.
Yeah.
It's
I like
the
that.
journey.
Okay.
Okay.
But you guys also have a connection with this movie specifically, right?
I remember this. Let's talk this through. You seem a little hazy. I remember when we went to Australia, we spent about a month previous in Asia, going through Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and China. Do we want to talk about how you busted your chin open in Vietnam, or do we want to skip that?
That was the one and only and last time I was ever on a motorcycle. I have not done it since. Something about going face first into a wall and having my chin burst like a ripe melon.
No.
That was
Lots
it.
of people got hurt. Didn't Blake break his foot?
I broke Blake's foot, yes.
Yeah, so there are a lot of injuries on that trip. My other favorite story, which we probably don't want to tell on this podcast, but wasn't it Travis who you didn't like being in crowds of people?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Travis had a really hard time in China, as I recall.
I feel like past tense is not accurate there. Travis still doesn't like being
You are much
I also
better.
don't love being in crowds of people. I'll be honest. I'm not a fan of that either.
I remember you didn't like me touching you, and I was a very handsy person in general. I was a very
just an
not
intimate relationship.
Yes, it was not. We get along a lot better now than we did in Australia. But I was a very... Personal space disappeared, especially when Ryan had a few drinks.
Yes, when
and
alcohol
Travis
was
like,
involved.
"Nope, don't do that." And I just remember in China, you were walking, and first of all, this is kind of an we may cut this part out.
Yeah,
but,
this is the part that
Travis is easily twice as big as the normal Chinese,
the average person.
human in
Yeah.
China. So it's like you're like going through like they're the sea and you're the like shark fin from Jaws going through, and you're just looking around. You're like shaking your head, and all of a sudden you just go, "Do you remember this?" Where you're like, "Fee, fi, fo, fo,"
Yes.
and everyone went and like scattered, and you're like, "Awesome," and then just like kept
That
walking.
worked. Perfect.
Like you just thought you'd like put on a scene and everyone would move away, and you're like, "Perfect." Okay, I'm glad you remember that because I've told Tara that story.
I knew that story before I met you.
The other good story that comes from that trip was, do you remember being in northern Thailand? I think it was in northern Thailand when we sat down, we were at dinner and we decided that we needed to have a Thai chili eating contest.
Yes. Have you heard this
No.
story? It was me. To say I was in the contest is being very generous because I believe
You
I
put a
had
chili
one
on your lips. It went
and
at
left.
least
And I was
that
like,
far.
wow. And it was me, you, and Shane.
Mm-hmm.
And you and Shane went like 1 for 1 for a while.
Oof.
I had one and was like out. Now I did bite down. I will say that. But compared to everything else, I was like, I took
So
the
who
bronze
won?
immediately.
Tara, I think the only people that won that contest were those that did not participate.
Fair enough,
That was
fair enough.
just my whole face was like slightly buzzing and then numb, and I was lightheaded.
Yes,
it was bad.
It was. You know, now there's hot ones and all those things where people do that, but it was that thing where you're like, I feel like I was watching Travis take ayahuasca or something, where it was like you were seeing the face of the Jaguar god. It was crazy.
It was not right.
The chin splitting. I want to tell my side of the chin thing real quick. I woke up because we're on a time change. And I woke up. Someone like, I think it was like Matt or somebody like poked me and was like, "Hey, we're gonna go rent motorcycles." And there were a few things that happened on this trip where I was kind of the crazy weird one, and I would go, "No, I'm not doing that." And it should have been like a huge warning sign to everybody who wanted to participate in that thing that this is a bad idea. So Matt poked me and went, "Hey, we're going to rent motorcycles." And I went, "Godspeed. You have a good time. I'm not doing that." And then I remember going to sleep, and the next thing so to me, this is like a 3-second story, because then I poked awake going, "Travis is in the ER. Like, there's been an accident."
What was the ER like where you
we
were?
need to really
too?
clarify what ER means here. I got wheeled to a regional clinic in a wheelbarrow attached to a bicycle. Like, I was holding my face together with a rag, waving at everyone that was laughing at me, because they all knew exactly what I'd done. And so I was like just dumped in front of this clinic, where they sort of put a sheet with a square hole over my chin, so I couldn't see what was happening. And then they just sewed it back together. There was no.
Thankfully, there was no like structural damage, or it was just a needle.
Wow.
And
I mean,
job.
and looking at you now, you'd never know.
Well, that's because when we went to Ho Chi Minh City, there was another doctor we went to, and he used. Now, this is what I remember. I don't know if this is exactly what it was, but this is the memory. Is he had these like phosphate sticks that looked like pieces of chalk, and he took it. He was wearing a big thick glove, and he took it and he burned the like where the flesh had grown in wrong. He burned it back with these phosphate sticks to even out the scar.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was sophisticated.
And did they give you anything for the like? Did you feel that? Did they numb you up?
I would think I was still in shock when they were sewing it together, because I didn't get anything. I don't remember getting anything for that.
Wow.
But then I think I had like Tylenol basically that I took for 2 weeks or something. But yeah, for the most part, no. It was.
In hindsight, this might be part of the reason why you were so agitated by my lack of personal space. I can now understand why you're like, just leave me alone. Maybe a little testy. But one of the things I do remember too is every once in a while, I don't remember exactly which cities, because it'd be every once in a while we'd end up at a store that was like bootleg DVDs, 20 what boiled down to 50 cents American DVD.
Yeah.
And so we were buying all these DVDs because we're like, we're going to spend 5 months in Australia. And it was like movies that were just in theaters, and movies that had like we hadn't seen before. And
this was the olden times.
Yes. A DVD, children, is a digital video disc, and what it is. I remember a couple things about one of them was like the second Lord of the Rings. which had just come out in theaters, but I think the problem, or maybe one of them had. One of them we got, and I remember it kept skipping back to a part, but it did it in such a way that, like, it took us two or three times going, oh, we've watched this scene before. Like, if we weren't, like, really paying attention.
Yeah, I think that's probably just a comment on the length of Lord of the Rings itself. That you
Possibly.
can look back on it and be like, oh, wait, did we see that elf before?
Yeah. But, there were also ones, like, I remember getting them, and I was sitting there just going through them, and you'd watch them, and some of them just flat out didn't work. It was like a 50-cent gamble. Like, is this work? Or there was ones that, like, had the wrong movie. It wasn't the movie you bought.
Or, like, the formatting was impossible. Yeah.
One of us got, either you or me, or both of us, was Treasure Planet, because we went 2003.
Bring that up. I think I still have it. Let me see if I think it's, like,
okay.
Give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
This is also a testament to the different type of people. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
There it is in its glory. I actually don't. Yeah, there it is.
This is a testament to the two different people we are. Travis got up and went and looked in his closet, and all I could think of is there's nothing in that closet. There's not much in that closet, whereas I feel like all of our closets are just stuffed with things. But yet you still know you have things from like 20 years ago. They're like, yes, I know exactly where it is. Or if you ask, I don't think there's anything in this house that's over. There's like 3 things that are over close to 20 years old, and I don't know where they'd be.
Things that I have from childhood are in this
I'm talking
house.
about me.
Oh,
this is
okay.
Me and Travis being.
I see. I was like,
I just mean like
Tara's the better person.
Again, like I don't have. I just think it's funny that you're like, yes, I know exactly where this.
I
DVD
love that
is.
you have it though.
Whereas I bought like 100 DVDs.
And they're all gone.
I threw them away at some point.
I mean, even like the best quality of them though was garbage. So it's not like they're not treasures by any means.
So, and I remember you specifically because I feel like I really enjoyed this movie, but no one else seemed to want to watch it with me. Everyone wanted to watch other movies, but you really liked it. I don't know if we watched it together, but I remember us talking about it, and I was talking about how much you enjoyed this movie.
Here's what I remember really liking about this movie, and I'm super excited to be doing this because I want to know if it still holds true, because this is not actually related to the story of Treasure Island whatsoever. Mm-hmm. The part that I remember appreciating about this movie is the extent of the world building that they did for like the super casual scenes. You know, that there's stuff that doesn't matter. It doesn't have plot significance. You never see it again. But I remember them going into this whole ecosystem that existed in space. And then they just confidently threw out we need oxygen to breathe. They said, nope, not in our world. And they just did whatever they wanted.
There's apparently a line that kind of explains that. But I like that they don't go. They're not like, I like that. It's like we have to fly through the Atheum or something. Like there's something that they're specifically flying through, which I think that one line gives it interest in that there's a now it feels more like a ship thing because you have to chart a course. You can't just it's not like point A to point B. There it explains why they have to go through certain things. It also explains why it's like an open air ship out in space. But if they don't dive into it, they're not it doesn't become part of the plot. It's just a line. And I agree with you. It's a movie where you can look in any corner away from the main thing, and there's interesting stuff going on,
which is I will say a dramatic difference from the original material.
Yes.
Because the voyage from England to wherever Treasure Island is like that.
Oh, the voyage isn't very long.
It just happens because we'll assume they're crossing the Atlantic. It's never clear, but we'll assume they're just crossing the Atlantic and it's just over. Right? There are a couple of significant plot moments that happen, but there's really no time spent describing what that sea voyage is like.
Right. There's a few events that happen, but
yeah, they're like moments that happen, but there's none of the journey doesn't really exist. It's just a beats and then they're there.
Mm-hmm. So do we want to dive in and start going into this?
Yeah, sure. I guess I should also mention I don't believe I've seen this one.
It's funny because you keep saying I don't believe I've seen it.
Well, because what happened was I was confusing this with Atlantis.
Yep, fair.
And then we saw Atlantis and I was like, oh, I've definitely seen Atlantis. So I'm pretty sure I have not seen this one because I think I thought like I keep switching them, but we'll find out after I watch it. I'll see if I remember.
Here's what surprised me that this was on your podcast, because for some reason I did not think this was a Disney movie.
Oh,
What did you think it was?
Well, so I will admit I'm not a big animation, like I don't know all the studios, so I didn't have an alternate studio in mind.
Right, okay.
But it just never, I don't remember it ever being marketed as a Disney movie. I don't remember it being super branded as a Disney movie. It just was like a thing that appeared and then frankly disappeared.
We'll go into why in a second here.
Why.
I'm curious to see what you folks have turned up about it, because the like brief amount that I read, I was like, oh, scandal.
Yeah. So it came out in 2002, and it received a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes. So we always kind of cover that, which isn't the worst and obviously isn't the best as far as numbers go, but it's not like the lowest, I don't think.
Here's a question about that. Do they have a cutoff? Like, is it only reviews that occur within 6 months of its release that matter for that rating, or does it change over time?
Probably, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. That's a great question.
Because this seems like one of those movies that, based on its like scandalous release, might have received some criticism.
Yes.
That, looking back at, might not have been warranted.
Yeah, agreed.
I think we went over this in the Lilo and Stitch episode. But
We
the top
did.
3 movies that year are Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, which came out the same weekend as this.
Oh, wow.
And Spider-Man. So that's the kind of stuff. I mean, next up is Attack of the Clones, Men in Black 2. I mean, they're going up against heavy.
Well,
stuff.
and Lilo and Stitch was the other Disney movie. So this is I have it here, the 5th time since 1940 where 2 Disney animated classics come out the same year. 1940, it was Pinocchio and Fantasia. 1977, it was The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and the Rescuers. Came out the same year.
Yeah, but Winnie the Pooh is the one where they stitched together a bunch of stuff to make a movie.
1999 was Tarzan and Fantasia 2000 because it came out in 99 instead of 2000. 2000 was Dinosaur and Emperor's New Groove, and then this and Lilo and Stitch.
Yes, and Lilo and Stitch goes on to make a decent amount of money, especially since it was at a much smaller budget than this.
Yes. Do you want to go in? Do you have numbers of the budget? I read something like 140 million.
That's what I saw too.
Yes, the budget was 140 million.
They didn't make that.
No,
back.
give me 1 second. They made like 109 worldwide, not just domestic, worldwide. This to the thing I saw, which this is since. Especially since a lot of our info, one of the things I've developed since working through this is like I need to look at the Disney documentary and then some other documentary stuff. And this one, Disney doesn't have a lot to offer. In fact, the one I saw had Roy Disney giving the most like half-hearted like, "Welcome to the art of animation. This is a movie where we also included CGI. The many animators and magicians at Disney will now show you how Long John Silver happened." Like, he just seems like so. And at the end, he like hawks a book. He's like, "If you enjoy this, please check out our Art of Animation book. We're trying to recoup some of the cost of this movie."
Oh,
no, he doesn't say that.
Yeah, but still,
Ryan, totally. We bought that bootleg CD, and we should have been buying a real version. That's what happened.
I was gonna say that's the other weird thing. This came out in 2002. We were in Australia in 2003. I remember when I got this, I'm like, "Oh man, I forgot about this movie," and it had come out like literally in November. Like, this came out in like Thanksgiving, and I was like, "Oh
theories.
yeah."
I have some theories about why that happened.
So it is to date the most expensive hand-drawn movie ever made to exist.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason is, again, Lilo and Stitch is going at it the saying you get less money than we normally give. What can you do with it?
Well, they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. And then this one is like, we're going to give you all this money. It's like, oh no, because this was a passion project of the directors Ron Clements and John Musker.
Yes.
Now they have done
Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid. Before that was Great Mouse Detective, Aladdin, Hercules.
Atlantis, right?
No, they didn't do Atlantis.
No, they didn't do Atlantis.
I think after Aladdin, Hercules, and then this one.
Oh, okay.
And then they go on to do Princess and the Frog and Moana, and then they retire. So this is their low point, but this is the one. They were pitching this back as early as 1985.
Yes, I was reading 85 or 87, somewhere in there, yeah.
Back when they were doing, I don't know if we talked about this, we talked about the Gong Show and that, like, Eisner was like, okay, anybody can pitch anything.
Yeah, I believe
right.
so,
And then he'll just go, no, we can't do that. And they pitched this, And he said, and there was at that time there was a script going around Paramount for a Star Trek movie that had a Treasure Island feel.
Mm-hmm.
And Eisner had just come from Paramount, so he goes, "No, we can't do that. They're going to do this, and it's going to be old hat." And then another one said, "Well, what if we do The Little Mermaid?" He goes, "No, we just did Splash. We can't have two mermaid movies." And then eventually, I think Katzenberg or somebody turned around and said, "Go ahead and try doing the mermaid one." And then that turned their thing. But after every movie they did, they go, "Can we now do Treasure Planet?" And they're like, "What if you do Aladdin instead?" And they're like, "Okay, we did Aladdin. Can we do Treasure Planet?" And they're like, "What if you did Hercules?" So this is like a passion project. So this kind of sucks for them that their passion project did so poorly.
Well, and I don't know if this might be a good point to kind of dive into the book a little bit and then talk about the animation process. The other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned this in Lilo and Stitch. It was nominated for Best Animated Feature. So was Lilo and Stitch. Spirited Away is what won that year. But they were both up against one another in this category. This apparently, too, I came across, it's the second retelling of the story in space, in a space setting. There was a 1987 Italian Ministries Treasure Island in Outer Space.
It was just called Treasure Island
in Outer Space. So I know nothing more than that. Okay. I just read that fact. I did not look anything up. So that's out there if you want to.
Italian Ministries? Is that what you said?
That's what it said.
That sounds like it's a government funded.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I have no more information.
Which, I mean, that makes sense because I feel like a lot of times they go, we want to encourage filmmaking in our country. It's not necessarily a government movie. It's just, we're going to give you money to do this movie.
Yeah, so like I said, I know nothing else.
After Peter Jackson did The Lord of the Rings in New Zealand, was like, we want more New Zealand movies. They gave all this money to a movie called Black Sheep, which is like the government injects some sort of mutagen into black sheep and they become killer black sheep. So that's what I'm saying. It's a government movie. It doesn't necessarily mean it has value. It's just the government has gone, here, have some money, make a movie.
So what I have for the book, and then obviously, Travis, I'd love your input on this, but I have that it was originally titled The Sea Cook, A Story for Boys.
Yeah.
So that was the original title.
I think is really important that like the shift in the focus of the story, because it was first to be about John Silver, which I think is really like where it ends up anyway. But yeah, so it was going to be The Sea Cook.
Yeah, so it was focused on that and its influence on popular perception of pirates. So a lot of what we know today comes from this story, like when we think of other pirate stories, and they said including the elements as treasure maps with like the X marks the spot, talk about the black spot, tropical islands, one-legged pirates with parrots on their shoulder, that kind of a thing. So that's really, I didn't do a deep dive into the book because I know you've recently reread it, so I just kind of wanted to get your input as well. And Ryan, have you ever read the book?
So I know there was like, do you remember there were comic books that were like comics of like, they were really like painted looking frames, but it was like, I had a couple of them. I think it was my mom's attempt to be like, you should read these. Like, it was like Robinson
classics,
Crusoe,
but
and Treasure Island, and it was like classics that were also done as comics. I think I read that. I think I had, remember how I think in Atlantis I said I had like a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? There was a similar, like, it was Treasure Island, but it was the same like company or like style of book. And then I think when I was older, I tried to read it, and I remember just like, I think it was one of those books where I went, I should read this. And there were sections where I was like, okay, now they're on the island. Okay, now I'm going to do, like, I was just kind of like skipping through a lot of it.
So I will say, Ryan, that was definitely my impression going back and rereading it. Because something that I had to remind myself is that it was not initially published as a novel.
Oh, was it?
It was serialized.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And that I think something like the first 12 chapters were written in 10 days. Like, he basically had a nephew.
On like a rum.
Yeah. He had a nephew, some family friends, got really inspired, sort of collapsed all of these historical references into these characters, condensing them down, making composites. So he drew from all these people he knew and these people that existed in sort of the cultural knowledge, and then just sort of wrote out this story. And so it is. It's like each chapter ends, and sometimes it's just a character stops talking and it's over. and then the next chapter will start in the next sentence, and you're like, and off we go again.
Yeah, and I should mention it was Robert Louis Stevenson who wrote the story, and 1883 is what I had for the date that it came out. But that is really interesting that it kind of just like stops and starts like that with each chapter.
Because I'm sure it was like, we'll take 5 pages and print it, and then
and it's clearly written to be that story for boys, right? That's that little part of the title. Because, Jim Hawkins is our protagonist, who is the least memorable character in literature history. Like, who cares? This guy is he's just dry. But you can clearly put yourself in his shoes as you're going through the adventure and doing all of the stuff. He's almost a non-person for that reason.
And you were calling this an adventure for boys. That was a big push of Disney around this time. Is like, that's why you see Atlantis and this. There was like, we don't want to do princess movies. Well, it was a push for this
science fiction. I think they tried this sci-fi fantasy. They tried it with Atlantis. They tried it with this, and then they kind of neither one
with Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, and then neither 2 out of the 3 didn't do so well. But I commend them for going here, because we talked about this in Atlantis, and I hope this one holds up in a similar way, where Atlantis, we really recommend it because there's so many kids out there that are interested in that genre, right? And as like an animated, like, to send children who have that interest, like to send them back to these movies. And I'm hoping the same holds true for this.
I'm gonna like put myself out there because I've seen parts of this more recently than I think you guys are. I don't know if I sit down and watch the whole thing.
I may have never seen it. So.
Right.
My memory is terrible.
I think this is a legit good movie. I think it just came out at a wrong time. I think there was, this is also after Shrek came out, and I've talked about this a bunch, where Shrek is now moving in this cynical direction where it's like, why would I want to watch this like earnest, like, I want to see the stars movie when I can see Shrek fart and make fun of Disney over here? Like, like that's what we're moving towards, and I think is sullied, animated movies for a while after this.
Well, I also have some things that I found interesting. This was the first film to be simultaneously released in regular theaters and IMAX. So you could have seen it in IMAX. So I'm curious, listeners, let us know if anyone out there has seen it in IMAX.
I don't know anyone who saw this
in theaters. In theater? I guess, let us know if you saw it in a theater, because that would be fun too. But I also found how they did the movie very interesting. It took 10 years to make, so it took a very long time to make. And they used hand-drawn 2D traditional animation, but they set that on top of 3D computer animation.
Not only that, but sometimes they then went on to put 3D computer animation on top of that. Like, Silver's arm and leg and part of his eye are CGI.
Yes.
And there's versions where they just drew it out, but then they went over. And one of the way, did you see how they tested that?
With Peter Pan.
Yeah, with Captain Hook.
Yeah.
They do a whole scene with Captain Hook. He's like, you go to the island, bring back Tinkerbell. And he does like the whole scene. And then they went into the archives and
it
got
was his arm without the hook that they used
so
as
they
the
had,
cyborg
so
arm.
then
I've seen the stills. I've not seen the actual.
I've got a video of
That's
it, and
great.
it's very cool because they do the whole. Because he's doing a lot of very expressive stuff. Because he's talking very stupidly to Smee.
Tinker.
He's like, "You go do." And he's doing all this stuff, and then they made a CGI arm, so it's that whole scene.
Well, and what I read, I have that Villains book. It was Glenn Keane and Eric Daniels who worked on John Silver. And they worked for more than 3 years, and apparently they tried out something like 500 versions of the character, which is wild.
Yeah.
Like, it was overwhelming the amount of versions they had for this character. But they felt that they wanted to flawlessly create what we see in the film, and then that's where they started using Peter Pan to test out this layering technique.
They also, interestingly enough, they make maquettes for these characters, like the big clay
Yes,
things.
I read this. Yeah.
This was one of the first maquettes to use. They said this one matches art and 3D animation because they use 3D printed parts.
They use plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my fact was they used laser technology.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was really... So they go, we printed out these parts, and then, like, raised out of this liquid and like dripped off, and I'm like, what is that? Because now we have the 3D printers that's just like a block of plastic and they like carve away.
Well, and you can like go buy a 3D printer at Costco or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
looking at how expensive this was and how long it took to make,
Yeah.
and how much technical innovation went into sort of creating their artistic vision. My question's always been, well, what did they do with that next? Right? Because usually when you spend this kind of money to push the frontiers of what's possible, it then gets applied later on in perhaps a more successful version. If this one's a flop, do they take what they learned and it goes somewhere else?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like in a lot of like television animation that goes on now, I've seen it in Bob's Burgers, I've seen it in Archer and things like that. There's a lot of things of like, how do we marry these two? Like there's another avenue where I feel like, and someone much more well-versed in animation could probably say this better, but like there's a lot, like Archer and Bob's Burgers are pretty much computer animated shows in a lot of ways. The technology just allows it to look more hand-drawn.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll be watching those shows like Teen Titans and stuff where they jump in a car and they drive off and the car is clearly a CGI car that's been like, I can tell because of the way it moves, and I know hand animation kind of jumps more and this is more smooth. Like I think it's because like after this movie, like hand animation as a like film theater experience goes, you know, the way of the dodo. You don't see it as much, but I think it there's a lot of CGI hand animation or animation that looks more hand drawn versus, you know, the traditional CGI in other forms of animation, the 30-minute show, you know, the straight to DVD, those things, like we just don't see it on the screen as much. And it's the idea behind it is for you to go, oh, I don't notice the difference between these two. Like they're not like, look how cool this is. And in this one, it's like, since it's new, they were kind of like, look at all this thing that's going to take you a little bit out of the experience, right? Like I think that was kind of a mistake to go look at how we did this.
Yeah, I think the idea of the mistakes that were made, again, this is me remembering, right? This is not a fresh take yet on this movie. But one of the things that I had not pieced together until I started looking at it was that the following year would be the start of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So Disney had in its pipeline this whole pirate narrative that they were ready to launch into the world. And I just kind of wonder, was that part of the reason that this sort of got sandbagged a little? That they didn't want to be telling that same story? They wanted to keep those two ideas separate enough? I don't know.
Well, they did have a sequel planned for this.
Yes.
And William Dafoe was supposed to be a villainous Ironbeard.
It was.
But it was canceled due to failure at the box office. But you gotta wonder, like you're saying, did Pirates, the original, had such a huge success at the theater. So you do have to wonder if that played into it in some way.
Someday we will do Pirates movies, but would you like to hear an awesome fact about the Pirates movies I heard recently?
Sure.
Do you guys know who Jack Sparrow was originally written for?
No. Oh, wait, Keith Richards?
Nope.
No. Who?
Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, boy.
Really?
Because he was doing Reign of Fire.
See, that makes sense.
Do you know the movie
me.
Reign of Fire where it's like dragons come back and then it's like 10 years in the future? Okay, so Disney was seeing the like they were seeing, I think that was a Touchstone film, or it was something where they were seeing that stuff and being like, because I feel like that was around the time when we didn't know what to do with Matthew McConaughey.
Is that Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale fighting dragons?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely saw that movie like 4 times.
Yes. So they were watching that and being like, this is great. This is going to do great. This is, you know, Matthew McConaughey is an action star. And so they were like working on the movie and they go, right apart from Matthew McConaughey in there. And then that movie bombed and McConaughey started doing like rom-coms and they're like, okay, never mind. And then they brought in Johnny Depp and said, these are the things we're working on. We'd like to work with you. And they're like, well, this one's based on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. You won't want to do that. And he's like, I actually really want to do that one. I want to be a pirate. So that's how that comes about. Anyway.
Which the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, right? That comes from Treasure Island.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like what I did not appreciate, and I think the story itself is somewhat of a victim of its own success. And that Long John Silver and the portrayal of pirates and the narrative of being a pirate that Robert Louis Stevenson put into that novel became so ubiquitous in our understanding of what pirates were that to go back to the story now, it just seems commonplace. Because we can't appreciate what it was that he was inventing because it's just what we think of when we think of a pirate.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like when I tell people to watch The Sopranos and they don't understand how great it is because it was the first TV show to do all that stuff.
To do all the things that things like Breaking Bad and all these other shows, expanded on. I think, mentioned this before we started recording, but this was Disney's third adaptation of Treasure Island. There was the 1950 Treasure Island, which, Travis, you said you just watched.
Oh boy, did it. Yep.
Was it bad, or did it not hold up?
Actually, Tara, here's a question for you. This is something I want to know about, because the third. Well, go ahead and say what the third one is, and then I'll ask my question.
Oh yeah, so the second one is Muppets Treasure Island, and then this is the third one.
Right. So one of the things that seems to change in almost every telling of this story is the ending.
Right. That was going to be my question to you.
Because no one seems satisfied with John Silver's story. And it's always his piece of the story that changes. And so the 1950s one is not what the book does.
What does the book do?
So the book lets him, they sort of get almost back to England, and he manages to steal away maybe enough money to put aside for 2 years of living. And he has a wife who manages his affairs and sold all of his stuff when he left England in the first time. And they just it's assumed that they sneak off to live this life of quiet retirement that he'd been talking about the whole time. And, Jim Hawkins is like, well, I hope he enjoys it because he's going to hell afterwards. So there's this whole moral play that happens about what his future is, but you don't know. You don't really know where he ends up.
And then what did they do in the 1951?
In the 1950s movie, he manages to steal a boat as they're leaving the island. And he just kind of sails off into the sunset, and they're like, well, I guess he died.
So I think the stealing a boat thing is
that's Muppets Treasure Island. He gets on the boat, but there's a hole in the boat, and so it's sinking as he's leaving with treasure. But a similar thing to the 1950s one, where
I think the whole point is, and we should address this, and we should get to the movie here in a sec, but is he the villain? The point of him is he's the bad guy through so much of the movie, but you like him. And they consider him the villain in the Disney's villain book. I think he is. Even though you'll see what happens to him in this one, I still think he's the bad guy. And we'll discuss that when we get to the end of who we rank. But I think that's part of the Tim Curry version. The Tim Curry version, he's clearly the bad guy. And even at the end when Jim's like, go on, and lets him go with some of the treasure, they still want to give him a comeuppance as a bad guy.
Yeah.
And so they put a hole in his boat, and, it's like comedy. But he's such a likable bad guy. And, at least in the movies, I think the whole point is, by the end, you're like, oh, he's a pirate. And I think everyone has that little bit of, on the surface, you're like, oh, I want to be a pirate. But you want to be this type of pirate. You don't be a real pirate where it's like, I'm losing limbs and the scurvy means my teeth are falling out.
Yeah.
I have to say, Ryan, that Ryan and Tara, to both of you, that regardless of whether or not this movie is as good as I remember it, I appreciate coming onto this podcast, if only for the reason that it has forced me to look more closely at the story of pirates and how we as a culture have told that story. Because I was like that. I was sort of really ambivalent. I was like, pirates are kind of people. They kill people. They're amoral. They do all of this awful stuff.
Yeah.
But you go back and you look at it, and, pirates, not great, but they came from the war between the English and the Spanish, where the English crown gave people a legal permission to steal stuff from the Spanish to stop the war. Right? And then when the war was over, those people, they didn't have anything to do. And England was like, we're not going to pay you a pension. We're not going to give you jobs. And so the only skill they had was sailing ships and killing people. So they were like, well, that's my job now.
Yeah.
But without any government, the ships functioned as a business and as a nation. So they got to choose their own laws. They got to follow their own rules. They got to elect leaders if that's what was happening.
They had their own
Women
code,
had opportunities. It was all across the spectrum, black and white. Everybody could come and be a pirate and do their thing so long as they played by whatever the ship's rules were. And what I didn't appreciate about that is that when you're talking about 50 years later, people in America going, hey, I don't like the English. What's a model we can use? There's some evidence that the pirate republic that was formed in Nassau was the closest example of how you could fight back the English and the model that could be used and how to incentivize people. So there was this working practicing democracy in the Caribbean under this pirate rule that was a part of the fire that lit the American Revolution, was that direct experience of what it was like to have self-government through elected processes.
See,
it's wild.
This is why I wanted to have Travis on. And I think Travis was like, I'm worried I don't have anything to say. And I'm like, Travis is going to have something that I'm going to be like, this is great.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I totally
really
did not. And so it really changed my perspective on what pirates mean culturally. And it's not just the dark stuff. It was really the only option for social mobility, upward movement. Like,
right.
It meant a lot in its time.
I have a couple things to look out for as you watch this film. Jim's mother sits on the bed to read a book to him, and on his bookshelf, Stitch is in a spacesuit.
Real quick,
so
two
keep
things.
Out for that.
Do you remember who played his mother?
No.
Laurie Metcalf. So it's Andy's
Oh.
mom. And two, be on lookout for this. Jim's mom, kind of a hottie.
Oh boy.
Just want to put that out there.
Another thing to look out for, the Ben, but it's
Yes.
like B pure B. Yeah. Sings a few bars from the Pirates ride. So that ties back into the ride that we were talking about with the Pirates of the Caribbean. And then also, on the planet in Ben's cave, Dr. Doppler says the phrase, "Dang it, Jim, I'm not a doctor. I mean, I am, but it's a doctorate and it's not the same thing." Apparently, that's a reference to Star Trek.
Yeah.
In 1966, Dr. Leonard H. Bones McCoy says something similar to that.
I love that you don't know Star Trek.
I know nothing about Star Trek, but I like to, for those who enjoy Star Trek, I like to share it.
For the record, what you just said was akin to Chewbacca? Like,
I figured, I figured it was a big deal character,
Yes.
but I was like, I don't know who this character is. The other thing I have is we always talk about when the animators go places. This one's funny where they go.
They go to the ride?
No.
Oh.
They, for John Silver, because he's the cook, the animators visited Benihana.
You say that? I do have a really clear memory of him wielding that knife.
That's
skillfully.
his
So
intro is his
it.
arms
Sure.
changing.
They take note of how he chops this, like when
Okay.
he's
Yep.
chopping the shrimp.
Okay.
So look out for that. That, if you've gone to a Benihana or something like a Benihana.
I think we're laughing because it's like, of course they went to a Benihana.
Yeah, but they always go places, and obviously this one isn't like they didn't go to Africa. They didn't go, but they.
I will say, what feels like happened is they're like, man, I really want to go to Benihana. How can we write it off as an expense?
Yeah.
Well, they had 10 years to figure it out.
That is true. That is
Exactly.
true. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention here, this isn't something to look out for, but we were talking about the animation earlier, and the ship was created using Disney's Deep Canvas process. Do you have anything on that?
Deep Canvas was the thing they used for Tarzan. Going through, so that way, instead of having like the multi-plane plane camera, the idea was this infinite.
Got it. I couldn't remember what it was.
I forget which axis this is. It's probably X, Y. So probably Z. Probably the axis going into the thing. So when he's like, there's scenes where he's running through, so it looks like it gives it more depth and it feels like he's running through. But yeah, that's what they used when Tarzan was swinging through the jungle.
So for the ship, they use the Deep Canvas process. Some scenes use all three types of animation that appear simultaneously. So
what's the third type? Hand drawn, CGI, and
the Deep Canvas process. I guess
okay,
consider
yeah.
as the third.
That's probably a combo, yeah.
Yeah, so that was just something else as we were talking about animation I wanted to include, but I think that's everything.
So the one thing I want to share with the group real quick, and Tara, if you could please keep from looking at the
don't look at the
screen for just a moment.
Okay.
Let me first bring this up. So, do you guys know Madame Tussauds?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the thing with Madame Tussauds is their big thing is making these wax figures that are so identical to
they're lifelike.
They're lifelike. So Treasure Planet had the first two Madame Tussauds characters that were fictional characters. Not only fictional characters, but not like.
Do they continue to do animated characters?
They'll do so. Like the Hulk is one, and Chewbacca, and they'll do things like that. But this is the one where they flat out did an animated character. So I wanted to show you guys real quick.
Boy. Tell me when I can look.
Yes, one sec. Let me share the screen. So there is Emma Thompson with Jim Hawkins.
Oh my gosh.
At the. So that
Oh,
looks
boy.
kind of... Isn't it just weird that it's like not quite human?
Yeah.
And then, of course, we also have John Silver,
Oh my gosh. I kind of like him.
which I also... There it is,
Oh
right
my
up close.
gosh.
I thought it was just weird enough to
Why
share.
and why start with these? That's just I have
Because
so many
I think they
questions.
went... It's Disney. It's by the makers of Little Mermaid. This is going to kill.
And they just didn't know that the movie wasn't going to do well.
I don't
Like,
think
when
anyone
did
knew
they...
it was going to be this
No,
bad.
but I
yeah.
mean, when did they put
I mean-
out these characters? Do you think it timed with the release of the
Kind
film?
of, yeah. I mean, this, like I said, this movie went up against Harry Potter 2, which is early enough that it's like, well, we didn't know it was gonna like beat out Disney stuff. Maybe. I mean, this movie effectively is what kills Disney animation, because I think after this, it's just like, there are like, 2 or 3 things that are still in production that are. You can't stop them at this point. If I look, I think up next is Brother Bear.
Yeah.
Let's see, I've got the episode.
It's Brother Bear.
Brother Bear and Home
Chicken
on the
Little.
Range. Chicken
Oh,
Little
Home-
is CGI animation, which they can do for
Oh,
much
okay.
cheaper, and that has been proven through. That's when they start doing that. But the
Yeah.
the last 2 hand animated ones they have, they're like, well, we can't go any further on this, so we can't like pull back. Let's at least get them out and recoup some money. But this kills it because of how much money it loses. Now, again, to say, I think this is a legitimately good movie. Not like, I think we're going to enjoy this. I think no one here is going to be like, now, I will say on this podcast, rarely do we watch a movie and go, I don't like it. So,
Yeah, that's true.
But are you guys ready then?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Let's take the VHS out of the clamshell and stick it in the VCR.
See you on the other side, listeners.
Yo ho ho, listeners. Yar, tis
Oh,
your
boy.
favorite podcasters.
Oh my.
We've returned from Treasure Planet, and
Just in the nick of time, too. Whew, that was close.
just in the nick of time. I know. I still enjoy this movie. I understand why people are like, it's fine. And I think that might be your perspective.
Yes, I enjoyed it. I think I'm with Travis that I really enjoyed the world building and all these extra characters and how creative they were with everything. Ben was my favorite character.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed it overall, but I grew up with the nostalgia
For
for Muppets Treasure Island.
yeah.
So there were so many moments where I was like, oh, I just want to go to Muppets Treasure Island.
And that's Disney, and that's just, 4 years.
1996 was
Yeah,
Muppets
so I
Treasure
guess that's
Island.
like 6 years before this, so that's got to be fresh.
In a lot of people's
I
minds. But
didn't-
I did enjoy it, but I'm not raving about it, and I'm not like I'd never watch it again. I'm
Right.
somewhere in between. I would watch it again.
I like it. I like the build. I think mostly when I rewatch it, I rewatch scenes or I rewatch character introductions or things like that, because I liked all the characters. Sans one. I think Travis would like to be the one to
Yeah,
broach
we'll
that
get there.
subject.
But Travis, what did you think on your rewatch? of it?
It is what I did remember about it was accurate. I think there was a lot to it wasn't great. I think I'm kind of with you that it's not a movie. I've owned that DVD now for nearly 20 years, and maybe this will be the end of it. Maybe I won't own that DVD
wow.
any longer.
What if you just broke it in half on the air? You're like, I'm done.
That's the end of this.
Wow. Okay, I feel like I might have liked it the most because I would watch it again. I just think it's a fun movie.
I think there's some shining moments in it for sure. I think as a whole,
Yes.
it kind of.
And it was interesting when I was looking up videos on it and kind of trying to do my research, where I felt like the 2 videos that were available were this is a perfect movie and it's ridiculous if you don't like it.
Whoa.
And this is the worst movie Disney has put out since The Black Cauldron. And I think it
I don't agree.
lies somewhere in between
Yeah,
those 2
I think
extremes.
it's somewhere in between.
I think
for
there are
sure.
failings of this movie. I think there are successes, but I don't think it's a failure. I mean, objectively, it's a financial failure.
Yeah.
Yes.
It did well critically, but I can see why this didn't make money. And I was wrong, listeners. It turns out there are plenty of toots in this movie.
Yes.
This is a very
I
toot
know
filled
you were
movie.
saying go to Shrek for the toots.
Nope,
There were
you
some
can come right to
toots.
Treasure
Yeah.
Island. Treasure Planet.
Mr. Zoff.
Yes, who
Yes.
disappears mysteriously.
I think he's part of the crew. We'll get to it, but I made a note about how she gets rid of half the crew pretty quickly. But
I think I think I would have liked this movie a lot more if they hadn't tried to use the framework of Treasure Island to tell it. I think if they had just like taken the creativity and the world building and that part that they had so clearly in their minds, and they'd used their own story and didn't feel like they had to kind of shoehorn in some of these moments, it might have been it just might have been a more engaging story.
I think
that's
it
a
would.
good point. Yeah, to use the general idea of Treasure Island, but not necessarily like follow it. And it doesn't follow it beat for beat, but it does hit
pretty
the big
close,
plot
yeah.
points. Yeah.
I think the big failing this movie had was Jim Hawkins. I think
Ooh,
you're right,
goodness.
and not just the physical appearance, which
Well-
Travis
Preach.
could not be quiet about during the whole movie.
It's
Well,
there.
And I will say, Travis, you mentioned, he's a nothing character
Mm-hmm.
in the original story. Kind of the same in Muppets Treasure Island. He's not your favorite
Right.
character in that either. And so I think, in
There
Muppets
is no one in the
Treasure
history
Island,
of the
you have
world.
all the Muppets. You have Tim Curry. And I think in this you have Silver. I
Yes.
really like Silver in this a lot.
It's Silver's story as
Yeah.
is, but if you're going to do that, like, I think the problem is, if you're going to have an interesting character arc through Silver, Jim Hawkins needs to be likable from the beginning, and I don't think he is.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
when he gets caught by the cops and his poor mother, you made the point about his mother, and I guess we're just diving into the story real quick. His mother owns the inn and is like bags under eyes, trying to keep this thing together. It just seems like she's overworked. She's a single mother. When he gets caught, he's kind of like, it's a real bummer that I just can't solar sail through the industrial zone. And it's not like, Mom, I'm sorry. Like, I think if he was more like, mea culpa, I screwed up.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be a more a character that you'd like.
I think in the beginning, when he's a little boy, I think you connect to him more as that little boy interested in the story than you do when you see him when he's older, because that's where the story starts. We have the character of Frollo. I don't know that actor's name.
It's Tony J, but it's,
he does the narration, and it opens up on this battle scene, and we find out it's actually Jim reading this story.
So originally it was going to be just a prelude battle scene, but they did kind of the same thing they did with, what was it, Atlantis, where they're like, we need to introduce characters.
Yeah.
So they did the thing where Jim's giant. Do you think he was cuter as a baby?
He was cuter as a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
So his cute face comes like popping up in the background, and I was like, whoa, what is this? Because I'd forgotten this part.
Yeah, that he was actually reading the book. But then we talked about his age. How old is he in the original story?
I think so. In the original story, he is clearly a child. Like, everyone refers to him as a child, which means he's got to be less than 12 or 13. And I'd say he's probably like 10 or 11.
Yeah, and in this one, we thought he was between 17 and 19 when he ages up. But from the wiki that I looked up quickly, he's supposed to be, what did I say, 15?
15. Because it says 12 years later,
Yeah.
which would mean, using
He was 3
math, that he was
reading the
3.
book.
And in the beginning, he's like, Mother, Captain Flint, do you believe in Treasure Planet? And he was like,
Yeah.
let me run the books on the inn.
He was
and-
giving us
oh,
Shakespearean dialogue at 3.
Yes. And and I was like, wait a second, I've
Yeah.
seen 3-year-olds.
Also, you wanted to talk about, Ryan, the backgrounds. I don't know if you want to talk about it here, but it opens up on this really beautiful galaxy background and it kind of just cuts right to the opening sequence. It says the title of the film, and then we jump into the narration.
Travis was really pointing out the backgrounds and how beautiful the galaxies look and stuff. There was a school of art that kind of did like classic, like the Treasure Island illustrations, like the most famous illustrations of Treasure Island and those type of things, called the Brandywine School of Art. I'm not sure where it was, but it was near something called the Brandywine River, and that's what they were trying
in
to
Hobbiton, I believe.
in Hobbiton. Doesn't that sound like, yeah? They were trying to imitate that, like those painted backgrounds and have them feel like that, which I think they did to really good effect.
Yeah, I think so too. I also liked that Treasure Planet was a planet with two...
It had an X on it.
It had an X on it with the rings
With two-
around the
What
planet.
are they just called rings? Like the rings of Saturn, I guess. But
Yeah.
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 So that's kind of, we find all that out very early on, and then that's where it kind of cuts to this inn. And Travis, you mentioned some other things about the Victorian sadness in the novel versus it being very cheery here, and I do want to kind of mention those when they're opposite one another.
It did feel like it, right? So like the inn is presented as perhaps down on its luck, but like it's got bustling business and she's working hard, but there are lots of patrons in the inn.
I mean, I don't even know if it's even down on its luck. It's just she's overworked because her son is supposed.
I'm assuming Jim isn't working.
Yeah, he's not there bussing tables. Yeah. He's out solar sailing. Again, why I'm, and maybe it's because I turn 40 in a mere week and a half. But I'm like, why isn't he should be respecting his mother? She's a struggling businesswoman.
Oh, boy.
My whole views on I'm sure maybe kid with 15 is like, he just wants to skateboard.
They really hype the angsty teen angle when they're trying to
which I think isn't really a good Disney. Like Disney doesn't do that. I mean, I guess you look back at Little Mermaid is probably the next one where it's like, I just want to be married to a man with legs.
Don't we all?
But that's I want to be taken out of this place, and I think that's what they were trying to do with him. But
it didn't come across.
He wasn't at the port trying to get on a boat and go somewhere. He was just causing a general disturbance.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think they got across that he wanted the adventure. Yeah. I think if they had done it more of he just wants to go on adventures, right? That's what it seems like when he's a child.
He just felt like a thrill seeker.
Yeah. And so you also mentioned this, Travis, that in the original story, he's a model child. He does everything right. He doesn't get into trouble.
He's a model.
Yeah,
it's really?
In the 1800s.
It's like Zoolander in...
Yeah, because I think that part of the genre of writing that was it was meant to be these stories for good boys and girls, right? So your protagonist character is someone who inadvertently finds themselves in all these exciting situations, but basically gets there by following the rules or doing what's right. And it's the circumstances that make things perilous or dangerous or whatever, but it's not them choosing really to misbehave. And so you have that real contrast with what Jim Hawkins is that we're given, because he seems to be the person who's always trying to break the rules. He's always trying to get himself out there. It's a marked difference in how they're choosing to portray that character.
Do you remember what Jim Hawkins Muppet, and I'm going to make this call now, the mini-sode after this is going to be Muppet Treasure Island.
Yes, it has to be.
But do you remember his motivation? Was he just an adventurer? I remember him having the softest, most
he has a very soft-spoken voice.
Well, it's also just, he's got a very, what is that boys choir where they're all high up? It's a
the
German.
Castrati?
Oh.
No, not. But the one, it's the
Vienna Boys Choir.
Vienna, thank you. I was the Vienna Boys Choir. It's all Ave Marie. I remember everyone else is singing and he's very I want to say. He's got just a very,
because he's a child.
Well, the year after that, he's probably I'm from Muppet Treasure Island. He's probably got a very low voice. I feel like he's right on the cusp of puberty.
I feel like there was something there about his father. There's a connection where Silver, I think, knew his father, and I don't remember if that's Silver.
Which feels very Pirates of the Caribbean.
Silver scamming him, or if that's truth.
Well, Kermit says it too. He says, "I knew your father."
Yes,
and they're both kind of saying he was a pirate. No, he was a this.
Yeah, his father was an explorer in quotes. Could have been a pirate, could have been an explorer.
And that's Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's Orlando Bloom's character, Will Turner. They're oh, your father was Bootstrap Bill, and he's my father wasn't a pirate. That's a big thing. It's a weird there's a weird
thorough line.
There's
through
8
them.
story points, and those are the only story points Disney can use in its pirates movies for some reason.
Yeah. But then we see, I like Billy Bones. He's not in it very long. I liked the design of his character a lot.
That is the last vocal performance. I believe it's Patrick McGoogan, who was in The Prisoner, which is an old TV show, British TV show. But you guys might remember him. He was the bad guy in Braveheart.
I don't remember. I've seen that movie,
Crookshanks,
but not
the
enough
one
to
who
remember,
his son has a gay lover and he throws him out the window. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
It's his advisor, and he's married to the Queen of France, but clearly they're a couple, and then he's giving him advice, and Crookshanks, I think his name, just turns him and throws him out a window. Yikes. I've watched Braveheart recently.
So Billy Bones shows up. He's very sick, and he's kind of going on about beware of the cyborg.
He's a turtle monster.
Yes, I like him.
And I think this is a good example where they accelerate the plot. Because, like, he hangs out in the book, right? He's there. The doctor's trying to care for him. He's, like, not supposed to be drinking. There's this whole thing about him drinking rum. Like, there's a lot of back and forth. And I think that they do a nice job in the movie. We're like, nope, that's not, we don't care. He's got a map, and he's dead.
Yeah, and he's like, they're coming for me chest and that kind of a thing. Yeah. And then this is where we meet, is it Dilbert?
Oh, yeah.
Doppler. I think it's Dilbert Doppler.
Yeah. Dilbert Doppler. Yeah,
Dr. Doppler.
Which is Niles from...
Yes.
The actor's name is...
David Hyde Pierce. Check out Craniacs, wherever you get your podcasts. That's CRANEIACS.
Ryan's other podcast. But we get an introduction to him in the inn before Billy Bones comes in. But then, basically... we realize people are chasing Billy Bones. Other pirates are coming and chasing. We never see who they are, but this whole
you
thing...
see shadows. And I think if you know the pirate, if you've seen the movie before, it clearly looks like... Silver, but he points with his flesh arm, not his robot arm. And then I think you see, like, the dude with all the little eyes and all that. Like, you see their shadows.
So the tavern gets set on fire... and they ride away on Delilah, which is...
It's like a snail without a shell thing.
Kind of
you had like an ostrich and a snail slammed together. It was an ostrich snail.
It's like a stagecoach, and Delilah is the animal that takes them away, and it was
she's like, Delilah. Yeah, he goes, Delilah's like, whoa! And I'm like, I love this character. Whatever this is, I love it.
So we go to his home, his mansion, really.
The doctor's.
Yes, the doctor's. And he winds up...
It's like a Rubik. He gets Billy Bones's treasure map, and it's like a Rubik's cube, a Rubik's sphere, and it opens up and it shows the direction to Treasure Planet. So of course, the mother's like, you can't go, and Doppler's like, I'll fund it,
and Jim's like, this will solve all our problems.
Which I also went, well, why doesn't the doctor offer to like rebuild the inn? However, I do feel like I think that's the adventure part, is both Doppler and Jim want to go on this adventure.
Yeah.
And that's what they're seeing. So they're like, I'll fund it to also go on this adventure. I also feel like the doctor, like, I think if we'd done a little more on him, it would have been like, he has a big house that's maybe his ancestral home, but he has no servants. Like, everything's like, there's piles of everything. Like, he's on his last dollars. I mean, why is he going to an inn to eat if he would have had servants? Like, I think that's like...
Maybe he's lonely if he lives in that house all alone.
My backstory, that's what I'm saying. My backstory is he lives in Wayne Manor, but he doesn't have an Alfred. He's like, that's the last of his money he uses to like do this whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah. But so they're clearly excited. He says he's going to fund it. And then Travis, you were saying that the characters that fund it, they're Fozzie and Bunsen.
That's my reference.
I can't remember who they are.
So there's the doctor.
Trelawney.
There's the squire and the doctor. And the doctor is like the go-between because he sort of transcends social class in a way because of his calling. So he treats both Jim's father, who's dying and dies very quickly, and then Billy Bones, who dies of a stroke because he keeps drinking rum.
He's a bad doctor, is what I'm hearing.
Great. It is also, remember, like the 1750s, so he's doing his best.
Do you ever see that old Saturday Night Live skit where it's like Steve Martin is a medieval doctor, and he's like, I think we need to 8 leeches and call me in the morning, and he like we'll do a good bleeding. He's like, are you sure this will work, doctor? He's like, hey, who's the dentist here? Like, or something like that.
Yikes. But so the usefulness of the doctor in the story is that because he transcends social class, he can connect the squire who has money with Jim who has the map, and it's just this plot device to make that go forward so that the expedition could get funded in a way that made sense to like a 19th century mind.
Yeah. So they go off to the spaceport, and this is another really creative thing. It looks like a crescent moon, but it's actually a whole city.
It's not the like it's not the moon like and something in front of it. It's literally that's the shape of the spaceport. Yeah. They do this with the book where it's like, I like that he has to turn the page to get to the next part. Like, it's so like partly new technology but also old technology, and that was something they wanted to do. They had a 70-30 rule, which was everything should be 70% old, 1800s ships and this and that and the other, and 30% sci-fi tech.
I feel like they achieved that.
Yeah, and I felt they did the
Yeah.
same thing with CGI versus hand animated. Was
Yeah.
supposed to be 7% hand animated, 30% CGI.
Mhm.
The other one that I liked that was really good was the kind of stained glass.
Oh, the
But
blinds.
they would change it, and it would
Oh,
and it
yeah.
would change to a different background. But
Mhm.
then they like open it a little, and it like just kind of like opens in the middle
Yeah.
just a
Yeah,
bit.
so they could see what was coming towards the end.
Yeah.
So when they're at the spaceport, this is where we see Dr. Doppler in the spacesuit. That giant
It looks
clunky
like a-
spacesuit.
Yeah, like a bell diver.
It's 20,000
Yeah.
Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And then this is where we see the ship for the first time, and it's the RLS Legacy and RLS After.
Robert Louis Stevenson.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then we get introduced to Ryan's favorite character, which is Flatula.
No, he is Mr. Zoff, but he is from the
Oh.
planet Flatula.
Thank you. I
Because
apologize.
He has all these like trunks off of him, or like look like tapir. Is that what the animal's called?
It is, yeah.
They look like their noses, where it's kind of like a
Yeah,
short
yeah,
elephant
yeah.
trunk, and they go, and that's how he talks.
And then Dr.
the
Doppler
best-
converses with him and does like a bunch of raspberry
oh, he's like, oh, I
noises.
speak Flatulon or
Yes.
something. And honestly, we can put Prince John away. We can put Gaston
Really?
away. The best character in all of
Wow.
fiction is Mr. Zoff.
I
of
am
Flatula.
shocked that he
That's
goes
not
above.
real. No, I'm not saying it, but he was my.
You were so delighted by
Well,
him.
the background pirates are all these kind of fun, weird designs. Like
yeah,
the
I
crow's
enjoyed
nest.
all the designs of the different
Yeah.
pirates.
The crow's nest guy has like 8 eyes,
Mhm.
and there's the two who apparently I read this. Their character names are Oxy and Moron,
Oh, that's
boy.
funny.
and it looks like a dude with like a weird tiny little head, but then the head like gets up and walks away, and then the body is another alien.
Yeah.
What were you, name your favorite background pirate?
Ooh.
Did no one care? If no one cares about this as much as I do, we can
I
skip
know.
it.
I think I liked the one with all the eyes. I
Oh.
liked the design. Who apparently was Russian. In the end, he sounded really
Oh.
Russian, but he didn't really
Well, like,
anywhere else.
yeah, there's a
like,
lot
he had
of-
one last line.
There's a lot of
that he
weird
sounded
Eastern
Russian.
European sounding.
But we should
accents.
also go into our least favorite pirate. Travis, take it away.
Oh,
Least favorite pirate.
you know who it is? It's Betty Boop with on legs.
With on legs.
Betty Boop's head.
I didn't
The
even
one-woman
register.
pirate.
She was terrible. She was honestly terrible. Like,
She
what is
looked
that?
like the
She was
thing.
very weird.
She looked like, what is his name? Sebulba from. Does anybody know Sebulba from Phantom Menace?
no,
the
but maybe
guy-
a
the-
listener will.
The the pod racer who beats Anakin Skywalker,
No.
so that he can be. He tries to beat Anakin Skywalker, but Anakin
Oh my
Skywalker doesn't. The other. There's Dud Bolt is another
Listeners, you can skip ahead.
pod
Skip
racer.
ahead.
There's
2 to 3
Ben
minutes.
Quadernos.
Skip ahead.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't care for her either.
Ben Quadraneros. That's gonna bother me the whole time if I screwed it up the first time. Anyway, now go ahead. I'm done.
And
Yeah,
this
she
is why
was
your
just-
40th
why-
is May the 40th be with you.
Why was she even? I mean, why was she even in there?
Yeah, I agree.
I think you're right. I think they wanted well, even if it was a male pirate, it
It
would have
would
been
not
a
have been
stupid
good.
design.
And the design, yeah, that was the one design I didn't really care for. Otherwise, I thought it was pretty creative. But this is where we meet Captain Amelia, and I love her.
Mhm.
She's
I
fantastic.
thought you would.
Yeah, I really
She's
liked
great.
her a lot. Emma Thompson is the voice of her.
Emma Thompson is Disney with this. She's in Pixar with Brave.
Mhm.
She's P.L. Travers. She's in Cruella de Vil. I
She
think about this
voices
today.
a couple other. She does a couple other animated characters, but they might not be Disney stuff. But I read the list. And
Right.
now
I
don't
just
remember what they are.
forgot she had such a prolific Disney career.
Yeah. So, and then we also meet the first officer, Mr. Arrow.
Mhm.
And this is where Mr. Doppler gets a little loose-lipped. He starts talking about the treasure map in front of the whole crew. And this is where she's like, no, don't do that. I'm not a huge fan of the crew you hired, but we'll make it work. But you really need to stop talking about this treasure map. We need to keep it between us. And that's when she locks the orb in her quarters, I guess. It's not really an office. I guess it's like her.
Mhm.
I like that she didn't look at the map, so it became very sure that she was concerned with she didn't like look at it and figure out where it was. You know, you're not.
Yeah, she was like, I
questioning her
don't need it
loyalty.
yet. I
Yeah.
can get us to the planet, and then like that's when we need the map.
Mhm.
Is what it seemed.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I wish she'd had more lines. More captain, please, more
Yeah.
captain.
I liked her writing. I liked Silver's writing, like the kind of flowy.
Our favorite line of hers was "Zip your howling screamer."
Yeah.
Travis really liked that one. But yeah, she was fantastic. I liked her a whole
the
lot.
flowy piratey language from her and from Silver were some of my favorite parts of this.
Mm-hmm. And that's when now we meet Mr. Silver. So we meet the cyborg, we see him cook, and I was really impressed with, they really showed off all the things that they worked really hard to make work well. I'm not saying that right, but.
And I think this is Glenn Keane, who's like.
And Eric. It was Glenn Keane and Eric Daniels, I believe.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah,
I think it was both of them.
Right, but I think I should know off the top of my head on Disney podcasts all the other stuff he's done. But Glenn Keane he was a animator that was so good they kept refusing to let him direct a movie because they're like, then we lose this amazing animator. And it does look good. And I think the things that you need to remember is all the times you forget part of Silver is CGI. It is very seamless in a lot of scenes.
He's, I think, the most seamless of all, because some other times it wasn't quite as successful, but I think that they did a really good job of integrating the techniques for Silver's character.
And he's so expressive. And Brian Murray is the voice actor, who is like a South African actor who mostly does stage, like doesn't really do a whole lot. Like, it's such a weird choice, but he's so perfect. Like, I like Long John Silver a lot. Now, not as good as Mr. Zhao. I already forgot his name.
Zoff.
But Mr. Zoff. And but no, I think he's legitimately like the best part of this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's such an interesting it's well acted, and it's not like Martin Short is good, but he's also like kind of stunt casting, and this is no one's like, oh, we got to get that Brian Murray dollar in the theater.
Yeah.
And I think that's the magic, really, of the story, is that you think about this was written in 1888, and Long John Silver is still a name that people associate with pirates. Like, for whatever reason, however he did it, he distilled so much of it and made it so clear that has resonated with us for over a century. So I think it's right there. It's just such a good character.
Real important question: when is the last time each of us ate at Long John Silver's?
That'd be a never.
You've never eaten at Long John Silver's?
I don't know that I have.
Oh, well, this was a dumb question. All right, let's go.
Yeah, I know you like Long John Silver's. I don't know that I ever did, because fast food fish to me is.
I love to destroy my body.
I actually forgot it was a restaurant until I was Googling Long John Silver to look at something up, and it was like, "Would you like the restaurant results?" And I was like, "What? What? No."
But this is also where we meet Morph, who instead of like a parrot or it's like his little sidekick.
Morph made the toy companies so excited for this movie because they're like, we're going to sell so many Morphs.
Yeah. Well, until the movie didn't do well.
Yeah.
Tara, I think Morph is another. So there were a couple of times throughout this movie where we could note that they made a decision about Silver to make him seem a more likable character. And a lot of that had to do with, like, he doesn't kill people in the movie, whereas, like, oh boy, he is out there doing his thing. And Morph, I think, is one of those parts of it, because he originally has a parrot.
Or a lobster from Muppet Treasure Island.
Right, okay, or a lobster. And the parrot belonged to Captain Flint.
Oh, okay.
And so the parrot knows the story, but when Jim meets Silver as a cook in a bar, basically, in town, Silver tells Jim about the parrot's origin, tells Jim that the parrot came from Flint. Like, so there's already this immediate connection that Silver was working for Flint and did all the same things that Flint did to get that money. So Silver's in deep because he's got that parrot. And so by switching to Morph, whose origin we never get, you're sidestepping Flint's direct association with Silver. So Silver can be a little bit more of an innocent presenting character.
Yeah, and then also he's caring for another creature, right? I think there's that side of it too.
Yeah.
Where, it makes him more likable because
Morph's endearing.
He seems personable, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, in that way.
They also, like, in this world, Flint was like over 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a legend.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense because once they get there, it's like how the treasure is buried as opposed to just where the treasure is buried.
Becomes a bigger deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, what is this? In my heart, wish captain, but I am the doctor. What was I right?
That's
What
me.
does that mean?
That's me. That was
Oh,
me.
that was
that's
what
right,
Travis
that's
said.
right.
That's right.
I
That's
was
right.
like, what is that? Okay,
That was
let
my
me say that again. Now that
leaking out that I'm not the
got it.
captain, but I'm really just the doctor.
That's right. Yeah, I wrote it down and then I was like, what does that mean? Okay, so yes, Travis in his heart wishes to be the captain, but in real life
Yes.
he's the doctor. And so
Definitely.
we all picked who our characters were. I'm Ben, I believe.
Yes, I'm Mr. Zoff.
Yes.
I don't know who I would really be like out of the whole thing. Probably a side character that toots is probably the most accurate, but I would like to say I was at least had a voice actor as opposed to a whoopee cushion.
So, in the very beginning, Jim doesn't trust Silver because he is a cyborg. So he's testing him and he's telling him this story of meeting Billy Bones and kind of what Billy Bones said. And Silver doesn't flinch. He just is cooking, doing his work, and just trying to play it real cool. So that's kind of how their meeting starts off, with Jim being very suspicious of him. And then I wrote about the sails. I love the launch sequence of the ship and those solar sails and the design. Everything was very cool.
Well, they
about
don't
this.
tell you how they work, like
Yeah.
verbally. They just
Yeah,
visually, like
they
you
just
see them
show
get
you.
filled with light and then like a meter go up. And that comes back to play later during the supernova, which is our next, I guess we'll get there in a bit. But yeah, like where it's like they get filled up and it overdoes
Yeah,
them.
so that whole sequence was very cool. And then when they're launching, you see whales swimming in space, which reminded me of Fantasia 2000, that whole sequence with the whales with Pines of Rome. So it's Pines of Rome, right? With the
Yes, I
whales?
believe that's the right
Yeah.
one.
So then my next note is Jim. Worst character, same in the book.
Yeah. We had a lot to say.
Yeah,
So
we had a
bad.
lot to say about
Let's take
Jim.
a second about Jim's haircut. It's an undercut, but also there's like a ponytail, which I think if they would have gotten rid of the ponytail,
Is it a
would have.
ponytail or is it a rat tail?
I think it's more
It's
of
a rat tail, but then
Yeah.
it's like so tight that it sticks straight out.
Yeah.
Like it's mostly just
Also, he has an
binding.
earring. He has like too many things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they had to pare back one or two of those things, I think.
like I feel like he was a tattoo away from being like an ex like a bartender who used to play in the band that played at that bar. Like that's you know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
Sorry.
I do. So
fine.
he's just Jim Hawkins. There's a reason why if you say that name to anybody, they're going to be like, "Who was that meant to be?" They're never going to piece it together with it being from Treasure Island because no one cares about him. And I just feel like that was, the movie had the same problem.
I was like NCAA quarterback. That's what that sounds like to me. Like Jim Hawkins
Yeah.
of the Buckeyes.
Yeah. Not who you'd associate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this next part, again, this is making us like Silver even more, is the bug guy. What was his name?
Mr. Scroop.
Mr. Scroop. He goes after Jim. And I can't remember specifically what happens here.
He's listening. He's because Arrow assigns him to Silver, which they talk
work for Silver.
which they
Yeah.
talk about a little bit more in Muppet Treasure Island because it's like we don't want them to wonder why there's this child on here. Like we can't
Yeah.
treat you better, so we're gonna put you with the crew. And then I like the bit where Silver just as doesn't want him there either, so he can like talk more freely. But Jim is assigned to swab the deck.
Oh, that's right.
And he's listening to the other pirates, and they're like, mind your own business. And then Scroop comes down, voiced by Michael Wincott, who is a guy of Gisborne in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
And Scroop's design is very different from the rest of the pirates.
He's also in The Crow. He's also in... Oh, what is the other thing he's in? He's in The Crow. He's in Alien Resurrection. His voice, like 90% of Michael Wincott in his voice. But do you remember that he's like, why a spoon, cousin? Why not an axe or a knife when he's doing the whole thing in Prince of Thieves? I love that voice. It's a good
remember
voice.
him,
I'm
so
glad they
sorry.
finally got him as a Disney villain.
Yeah, but his design is so different, I think, from the rest of the group. Don't you think? Like the rest of the group all look similar. Like they could be
Yes.
cousins to one another.
They're all kind of blobby. And
Yeah,
he's
and
like
he's-
insect.
Yeah, an insect and very big.
And like
very
the villain colors.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, the dark reds and the purples.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so Silver basically saves Jim from him and the crew. And then this is when we realize that Silver is actually teaming up with the crew because they all
He yells at him afterwards.
Yeah, they all meet in the kitchen
The galley.
The galley, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yells at them,
Know your
tells
boat
them
parts.
not to do the mutiny just yet. They've got to stick to the plan. And this is when we were like, how did this crew get hired?
Yeah.
This was like our question in there.
Travis, real quick, since we got you here for the Australian nostalgia kick, do you remember staying in that boat? Did you ever do that when you had to do the certain amount of like service hours, and one of them is you could stay overnight in that like?
No, I
that
didn't.
boat?
The tall mast ship.
Yes.
In the harp. No, I didn't do that one. But you did that, right?
I did that a couple times, and that was
What
it.
did you,
That was
why
the
did you
beginning
get
and end of this.
service hours?
It was a like the idea was we were essentially supposed to be there just to keep if anyone tried to vandalize and be like, hey,
so
go
got
away.
Got it.
But it
You know,
was it was like an 19th century or 18th century recreation of a boat.
Oh wow.
Can't exactly remember, but like you had to like stay in like literally like those hammocks, and
I spent a week working with injured birds of prey. That's one of the things I did.
oh, that's right.
And then
Did you? I think did we go on something together at one point?
well, I did. I ended up doing a lot of the trips out to the Aboriginal country.
Yes, I did that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I did one of those where they served kangaroo tail stew once. It was the worst. No, it tasted like BO smells. It was the worst thing I've ever eaten in my life.
Oh,
and I was like, and I'm like, people are looking at me, and I almost thought they were in the back being like, I can't believe he's eating that, because I'm like, it was terrible. Anyway.
So then, my next note, there's no real way to transition
fine,
into
that's
this.
fine.
The next note is Disney kills moms and are always okay with it, but they can't be okay with killing Jim's dad. Instead, Jim's dad runs off, and we see this in a montage that he leaves when he's young.
To the Goo Goo Dolls.
The Goo Goo Dolls, yeah.
I think it's more interesting for him to be a deadbeat dad. Because I think it is like it gives us a little bit of insight why he's distrustful of kind of a
and then why eventually he connects with Silver because
Right.
Silver is
Yes.
fulfilling
Yeah.
that figure. I do get that, but in the original story, his dad dies. So if they wanted to stick with the original, do you see? Like I
guess,
see both
but I think
sides of it.
I think what they're doing to make Silver more than just a monster is to make him this kind of they're finding each other, and it's a father-son
that's
story
true.
with not necessarily biological father and son.
Because it's definitely like the way that this one ends is definitely a twist, right? And the twist wouldn't make sense without that relationship that they're
That's true.
choosing to
Yeah.
make.
That's a good point. And in this montage, this is where you start to see Jim looking up to Silver, bonding with Silver. Silver still, making him work hard. And that's what he told the crew, is that he's going to make Jim work so hard he has no time to think about anything else.
yeah.
And he's going to be too tired to be paying attention to what the crew's doing as they're planning this mutiny, essentially.
And I also think, Silver's impressed with Jim. And I also, we find out this treasure is a lifelong obsession of Silver's. And I think he's had to, like he said, I think at this point, Jim says, well, how did you become a cyborg? He's like, you lose some things when you
Pursue
follow
a dream. Yeah.
And I think he's like kind of looking at Jim like, you could do this and like be a better version of what I was. I don't know.
And then this is where the supernova star comes into play. This whole
Yes.
it feels like a battle scene, but it's a battle against an explosion.
It's like a hurricane scene.
Yeah.
Which is
Is
what,
that what
which
happens
is what
in
it
the book?
stands in for. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
a storm at night. Yeah.
And this is where Jim's in charge of like the lifelines, which I thought
Well,
was
and
funny.
he saved Silver during the firestorm.
Yes.
Jim saved Silver, so there's a bonding moment there between Jim and Silver. And then, yes, he's supposed to tie and make sure all the lifelines are tight as it changes into a black hole.
Which
so.
is just rope. Like there's no like
No
tie
tech.
the tech rope or
They're
the synth
sailing
rope.
through the stars, and they are using a piece of hemp to connect
Yes.
themselves to the boat.
Yes. And so Mr. Arrow gets kind of flung off the boat, but he's tied and he's secure. And this is when
Scroop.
he's
Like
Bug Guy
like,
in my notes.
Like Scoop, but with an R.
I know, but in my notes he's Mr. Bug Guy. So,
Okay.
but Bugman. So yeah, he cuts Arrow's line, and so Arrow just floats into nothingness. It's the last we see of Mr. Arrow.
There's a couple shots of people floating away like gravity style, and it is a little hard to watch.
Disturbing. But Travis, you said in the book Silver kills Arrow.
Yeah, my memory is that Silver arranges basically to get him wasted. And so Arrow's swept off the boat because he's drunk.
Oh, to get him drunk.
Yeah, and then
I thought you meant like you were. It was a euphemism for killed.
oh no,
To
so
get him wasted. I'm
he-
like, why are you saying it that way?
no, he overserves him with rum, and I think so. The connection there to me is that I think Silver implicates Jim in getting the rum. Because Jim's able, as the like working in the galley, he can just go ask the captain for these things, and the captain's not going to think that this child again is drinking the rum, so there must be legitimate need for it. So he can go ask for this extra dosage of rum, and then that's what Silver uses to serve Arrow to get him drunk, so then he falls off the boat.
I like this version better. Like, even if it was just at
Yeah.
sea, like
Yeah.
it makes, because I like the idea of Mr. Arrow
Well-
being like stalwart and just like the beacon of what's right on the ship, so he wouldn't be like, I'm gonna drink too much, but also like I like, there's this scene where they go, what happened to Mr. Arrow, and Scroop is like, his lifeline was not secure.
Well, but that's the thing is right before that, the captain celebrates what a great job
Yeah.
Jim did
And he-
securing the lifeline. So he has this moment of feeling really good that he finally did something right. And then, it comes to be that they find out Mr. Arrow is not
yes,
with them.
it's also like a blow to Jim's self-confidence.
Yes.
And it's another moment where Silver is the story is being changed to exonerate Silver, so he's not implicated at all
Yeah.
in the death of Arrow.
Yeah, and this is where he says to Jim, you have the makings of greatness, because Jim is really down on himself, and Silver comes in to try to like give him this, not really a pep talk, but try to be like, you can really do this.
And after that, Jim is looking for Morph, playing kind of like hide and seek. Morph is like, he's goofing around with Morph, and they get stuck in a barrel.
Well, right
of something.
before that,
sorry.
is when, I just think this is an important point, because the crew talks about this. Silver says to himself, or says to Morph, I'm getting in too deep.
Yeah.
And Silver admits to himself that he likes Jim, he's attached to Jim, and Mr. Scroop overhears that. And then they all meet. So yeah, he's playing hide and seek, and they're in this barrel of, they're not apples but in this version, I don't know what space fruit, but yeah.
And it looks like figs, like I don't know what it is. Anyway.
Yeah.
Jim overhears them having the plan about the mutiny, and him saying like, I don't care about that kid, et cetera, et cetera.
Because they call him on getting close with him. Yeah.
And they get called up to the deck because they see land. And this part I really like. So Jim comes out, and Silver's like, oh, I left my spyglass downstairs. And then they meet at the top.
So it's clear that Jim had to have been down there when they were talking.
But they do such a good moment with it where they're like, Jimbo. And like they're neither of them is going to say it for a minute.
Yeah, neither of them admit to it. And I don't think they admit to it at all, but it's clear that Jim knows what's going on. And then he hits his cyborg leg.
He stabs his cyborg leg with a pair of scissors or something.
Yeah, and then that's when Silver says to the crew, okay, change of plans. We're taking the ship now.
Yes. And that's where Mr. Zoff goes down in a blaze of glory trying to protect the ship.
Yes.
As the one
big
triumphant
triumphant moment that we never see. But this
It's
is
also
where...
I was gonna say this is kind of the moment where the story really accelerates, right? There's a lot of hot things come like fast at you, but it's also, I think, the big moment where the story kind of leaves the text, right? We're no longer following the narrative sequence that is in Treasure Island. We have the narrative chunks. They're just coming in different order and slightly spun, and like we're really telling a different story at this point, I think.
Oh, so I wrote here, it wasn't the captain, it's Dr. Doppler just killed half the crew. I think he opens something when the crew is chasing them. Yes, that's what happens.
They're getting into the longboat.
And that's when I think your favorite character leaves, because I think there's like 5 or 6 crew members that are chasing them.
I think he was saying, let me on the boat, I'm on your side. But since only Dr. Doppler spoke flatulon, that was what was going on.
You know what, Ryan?
When,
I think that's right. I think that's
I'll
right.
go with it. I'll go with it. But that's when
and then as he was falling, he goes, which is flatulon for like, I can survive in space.
Pick me up later.
I'll always be with you.
But he shoots the thing and it falls, and that's when she goes, "Did you aim for that?" He's like, "Do you know, actually I did." Which I thought was really funny.
Yeah, and then this is also when Morph is playing. We find out too that even though Morph is Silvers, he's created this bond with Jim, and so he spends a lot of time with Jim. And when Jim gets the orb before they're leaving the boat, because now all the pirates are chasing them and they're trying to get to a longboat to get off the ship, Morph changes into the orb and goes back and forth. And so it's pretty clear you're going to know what's going to happen here.
Right.
He thinks he has the orb and he takes it from Silver and jumps on the boat, and really he has Morph. And we find that out later.
This is also the Point Break scene where Silver goes to shoot him and then is like, no,
can't do
it.
Yeah, he can't do it.
And we did say that Morph is a shape change. He's a mimic. That Morph can assume the color and shape and
I'm not sure if we have. So I'm glad you're mentioning it.
He's a little pink blob that floats around and changes into when he makes fun of people by changing into them and making
mimicking
fun of
their voices and shape shifting all the time. So they crash on the planet, and this is when we find out that the captain is hurt. So
it's the typical adventure, the mysterious side injury.
Well, then it looks like her arm,
the bloodless, bruiseless injury.
And then her arm is in a sling later on. So I'm not entirely sure what happened.
Probably broke some ribs, but for some reason that affects her judgment.
Yeah. And then
it's a blow to the head too.
Yes, okay.
And then this is when Jim finds Ben, who's voiced by Martin Short, and who has gone crazy.
Bioelectric navigator.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit, Travis, about the character that this is
based on. Yeah.
So Ben, right, is Benjamin Gunn.
Mm-hmm.
So not too much of a stretch there. He's in the book also crazy. His whole story when he meets Jim is that he hasn't had a Christian meal or Christian cuisine in 5 years since he's been stranded. And the thing that he misses the most is cheese. So he spends a lot of time asking, "Do you have cheese in your pocket?" And Jim's like, "No, I do not have cheese in my pocket."
Another reason why I'm Ben. I love cheese.
All your pocket cheese.
All my pocket cheese. No, I just love cheese.
But he is crazy, right? And he talks in riddles. Basically he can't get out one directed thought. And he doesn't ever actually meet the crew. So there are all these differences. But so Ben remains a recluse. And he doesn't really engage with the crew until much later and nearly the end of the novel.
And then you're saying his ending is he has he spends 1,000 pounds in 20 days or something.
Poor Ben. So Ben, okay, again, just because I think it's just a darker story. But so while Ben refuses to meet the crew, he is killing the pirates at night. So he is knifing them in their sleep.
Oh my gosh.
While they're camping on the island, and he's just stalking them. But he does survive. We'll get there, but he does survive, and his share, which is ludicrous, by the way, let me tell you, not fair, because they find 700,000 pounds, and Ben gets 1,000 of it, which he spends in 19 days. So the story is very clear that on day 20, old Ben Gunn is back on the streets begging for money.
Aww.
We don't know where the money goes. They don't tell you where he spends it, but it's gone.
Yeah,
it's all cheese.
It was all cheese. But yeah, so two very different trajectories for these characters.
Yeah.
And just to make sure we cover all of the literary classic version of this, it is Benjamina Gunn, played by Miss Piggy
in Muppets Treasure Island.
You know, I kind of wish I might have to see Muppet Treasure Island now.
You may need to watch it after this.
I've never seen it.
So remember how I told you the thing to remember about this one is very earnest and pure. Muppet Treasure Island is very silly.
It is very silly.
It's good.
Have you ever seen Muppets Christmas Carol?
I have.
So it's in that same.
Yeah.
It's sillier than Muppets
way
Christmas
sillier.
Carol.
Muppet Christmas Carol is
I might like this movie.
You'll like it. Yes.
I think you'll like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it, but I feel like after talking to you and also being someone who knows the original story of Treasure Island, I think you'll probably get a kick out of how they adapt it with Muppets. But this is when Ben starts talking about Captain Flint. So at first, Jim's like, "Oh, I found this guy who's been stranded. I don't know anything about him." And then when he starts rambling about Flint, then, his ears kind of perk up and he tries to get connected with Ben.
He's crazy too, but literally part of his memory has gone.
Has been
he's a
pulled
robot.
out. Yeah. And I thought the orb was going to go into Ben's head, which does not happen. But I thought that's maybe where that was going. So they go to Ben's house. They were looking to find cover, and he's like, "Oh, this is perfect." But then Ben shouts, "There are
Hey,
your
friends are here.
and shouts and's like, "Come closer." And so obviously he gives away their position with that. So
I feel like I remember a scene like this from some version I saw where they do have like a parlay, but they're like at the top of a hill or something, and it's like, is that in the book?
And it's another one of those instances where it's sort of like a bizarro conversion, and that Flint, when he first was on the island, built this stockade that was their defensible position, and then abandoned it. And so the loyal members of the crew find it first and take up a defense that occupy it. And when the pirates find them, it is Silver that comes to have a parlay to talk about how they're going to surrender. And kicks off the next part of the book. But yeah, so this is like, again, a bunch of stuff stuffed together to fit their retelling.
Well, and their retelling, his parlay to Jim is, if you stick with me, we'll walk away as kings. Like, I'll separate from them, and you and I can split the treasure. And Jim is very adamant, you're never going to see any of this treasure. I don't want to do any of this. And so then this is when Morph winds up staying with Jim. Yeah. There's a moment there where Morph chooses and doesn't go with Silver. And then this is when Jim also realizes, oh, they don't realize we don't have the map. They think we have it. So Jim has to go back up to the ship. He wants to disable the cannons so they can't.
There's a back door. I just want to talk about something real quick. I liked when he goes through the back door of the thing to go and find the pirates. Their skiff is like tied to something, but floating in the and just kind of bobbing.
Well, and we realized from Ben's home, the back door is like, it's all this machinery underneath the island, so you can kind of get to the planet. Yeah, you can get to different places on the planet that way. And so he wants to disable the cannons because there are other pirates on that ship that could potentially attack them at some point. So he goes and does that.
I think Silver actually says, "I'm going to use the cannons to take you out if you don't give me the map."
So he goes and does all of that, and then there's this battle with Mr. Scroop.
You got it!
He is because in my notes it's Snoop, so I finally did start writing a name.
Mr. Snoops is the rescuers. Mr. Scroop is...
But yeah, so it's this scene between them battling as Ben is trying to disable the cannons and again gives away their position because there's a million wires and he doesn't get the right wire. Spoiler, for like 6 different tries. And all these different things happen that then create more obstacles for Jim as he's trying to not only get the orb, but then also battle with Scroop.
And the final one is the gravity. So they start floating away and Jim does like a maneuver and gets away. And then you see, kind of the opposite of the typical villain death, where they fall from a great height. He's floating away up
into nowhere.
He's like slowly. And he
his
passes
scream
Mr.
is
Zoff.
really intense.
Well, that's Michael Wincott. But he passes Mr. Zoff, and he goes, "This is all your fault, Zoff, for being such a good character."
Oh my God.
Zoff is slowly swimming back to the spaceport.
Which is another change, right? Because in the book, Jim kills him.
Scroop?
Yeah.
Is there a character actually named Scroop in the...
Well, the book version is Israel Hands.
Oh,
that's the character's name that plays the same role.
Well, apparently there's a character called Mr. Hands in here. I think it's the big 4-armed guy. I remember reading that somewhere.
But this is it's another way of sort of lightening the tone of the story.
Yeah.
By sidestepping having Jim ever actually kill anybody. So it's more like a series of accidents that he ends up floating off to space rather than Jim intentionally tries to kill him.
Yeah, like actively seeking that out versus
yeah.
And so then this is when, by the time Jim gets back, Silver has captured the captain, Dr. Doppler, and is basically like, give us the map. And Jim's like, no, I have to go with you. And so then they make the decision everyone's going to go. So they're going to take everyone to follow this map.
Because, and I think we haven't necessarily pointed this out yet, but the map, right, being this sphere, the Rubik's Cube, isn't something that can be read by anybody. And apparently, for whatever reason, Jim is the only one who's got the magic touch to make it open.
Who's
So if
like
he
figured it
doesn't
out.
do it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for
Then
saying
they
that.
can't access it.
Right.
So that's why he's able to bargain that if I'm coming, they're coming.
So it opens up much like the spell in Skyrim that points you to your next quest marker.
It does, in fact.
And they start following it to this kind of empty space where Jim figures out you can place the sphere into the ground, and this portal opens up, and it keeps opening up to like different space ports, and that's how they figure out Flint
And
was able
earlier,
to...
Ben said something about it, and it sounded like ramblings. He was like, and the door just opens and closes and opens and closes.
It's all these different portals to like different worlds. I like the one where I open it and there's a monster, and it like turns and looks and almost,
But
like...
that's how they figure out that Flint has gotten all this treasure from all over, different parts of the universe, is because he's been able to utilize this portal.
Right. But then they figure out there's a portal. They do the really hard puzzle of how do we get to the middle of the planet, and he goes, well, just press the one that's the
middle.
planet, the middle of the thing.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. But so then they go to the middle, and it's like this orb in the middle that's like spinning, and these lasers are going into things, and it's like just a big pile of treasure. But they trip something as they go in, like a laser. They walk past the laser.
Yeah, almost like a tripwire,
Yeah.
but it's a laser instead. And then at one point, one of the pirates say we're going to need a bigger boat. So
Yes.
Ryan loves Jaws, so I was
reference.
excited to hear that. But
Ben and Jim kind of find a ship in the core. They go over to it and they find Flint, like his bones, and he's holding Ben's memory, and he puts the memory back in Ben, and Ben's like, "Oh right, I remember. There's a giant booby trap here."
yes,
and
and we need to get out now.
Yeah, he's like, "We only have so long before the planet explodes."
Yeah.
And so then it goes, it does the, this is another action scene that we can't really describe, but like the core starts splitting, things start falling and blowing up.
Pirates fall
into the middle, and they say, "Oh God, we're gonna die," unlike Mr. Zoff, who's still alive. And then there's a whole scene where
Jim basically hot wires the ship.
Silver tries to get on the ship, but then the ship is like being zapped by a laser, and
the ship is full of treasure.
Jim is falling, so Silver has to make the Raiders of the Last, or the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade decision of, do I go for the treasure or do I,
or do I save
Jim? And he picks Jim, and they get out. And I remember the line I like is Jim's like, "Why'd you do it?" He's like, "Oh, it's just a lifelong obsession, Jim. I'll get over it." I just like that line so much.
And it's I think the escape sequence, right, is an important part of Jim and Silver's relationship, because the whole time we see Jim is tinkering with his Solar Surfer thing, and then he and Silver are doing in their little learning montage, relationship building montage. He's fiddling with other stuff on the ship. So when they get inside the center of the planet, they do not have the boat they arrived in or any of the lifeboat things that go with it. They have to bring back to life in a sense the boat that's already there.
Right.
So he has to take this decrepit ship and try and get that to work. So it's his I can do it. This moment where he is a functioning member of the crew, and he does a really valuable thing.
Well, they do that a little bit better later, I think, when Doppler and Amelia escape, and then they show up then in the what's it called? It's the RLS Legacy.
Legacy.
So they show up in the Legacy with Ben, and Ben's like, "We gotta get out of here," and they're trying to leave, but the engines aren't good. They're like, "We're not gonna make it away from the planet," and that's when Jim's like, "We have to go back through the portal."
Yeah.
And I think that's the scene where he kind of steps up, because people are like, "What?" And that's, I also think, when Silver steps up and goes, "Everybody listen to Jim." Jim knows what he's talking
making
about.
sense. This is our best way to survive. And then he makes another surfer.
Yeah, he goes, "How can I help?" I like that scene where he's not trying to lead, he's trying to support Jim.
Yeah.
And then Jim makes another surfer out of an engine and a piece of metal, and surfs off and hits the button so they can go through the portal.
Yeah.
Anything we want to say? I'm kind of truncating this last bit because it's very physical.
Fine. It's hard to describe a lot of it, so that's fine. Basically, the next part is what we talked about at the start of how the story changes with each version of Treasure
Yes.
Island with what happens with Silver. So that's the next big part to probably talk about.
Yeah, they get through
here.
the portal, and then Silver's like trying to
because the captain
quietly escape.
Yeah,
on
the
us.
captain says he's going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Which we should point out that in this version, they make it through that portal with 0 treasure. They have come back with nothing.
As far as they know.
They've got nothing from this adventure other than their lives, and most of those were lost along the way.
So,
except for Mr.
Zoff, who is slowly making his way back home. So to Flatula, where he is the king of Flatula. So
he's trying to leave on a longboat.
I'm like but all I can think of is Mr. Zoff.
Yeah.
Long John Silver is leaving on a longboat. He, Jim comes over and he's kind of like, no, I was just fixing it. And Jim's like, go ahead and get out of here, which is what they do in Muppet Treasure Island. I don't know if they do in the 1950s one or at all.
No.
So it's
when he offers to take Jim with him.
Yeah, he says, you should come with me. And
Yeah.
he's like, no, you taught me that I should forge my own destiny.
To chart his own course.
Excuse me. And
lots of moving dialogue between the two of them. Like they really
I think this is a
hitting
good
those
scene.
emotional beats.
I didn't feel as emotional because I knew this scene, but like sometimes when we watch these Disney movies, I get emotional at very dumb parts. I didn't get so here, but I really liked the scene.
I did too. Yeah, I think it's a good way to wrap up the story. The story of them and their interaction.
As he's going, he throws them a handful. Like apparently he puts some in his pockets, and throws them like a handful. Is like, for your mother's inn, and it's like 8 jewels
and some coins, couple coins.
And it's like, oh, if that's all it cost, you guys should have all gotten together and just be like, even if you all just would have like slowly gotten one bag and all been on the same page, you could have benefited. And that's why I think we need to change to a socialist, democratic socialist country, because when the group benefits everyone. Okay, sorry.
The other thing is this is another thing to make Silver even more personable. Is Morph is really sad to go with Silver, but chooses to go with Silver. And he's like, I need you to do a job for me, Morphe. I need you to look after Jim. And so he stays with Jim.
Because he's like, when the sequel comes, if we don't have Silver in it, we definitely want to make sure we have Morph in it, because that's some
gotta have that blob.
Yes.
Yep.
And so then it cuts to the mother at the port. Everybody's reunited. The inn is back open. Ben's a cook. And then this is where we see that the captain and Dr. Doppler have become a family unit, and they have how many children? 4 or 5?
They have 4, 3 cats and a dog. And there was something I read. I don't know if they wanted to present this somehow, but the idea is that Doppler was the one who carried the babies to term in that alien relationship. I don't know if that was just backstory, if that was something they wanted to visually represent or what, but it's definitely stuff I've seen all over the internet.
And then
yes,
I'm totally into
like
that.
a seahorse.
Yeah.
Kind of
And then
love
it kind
too.
of ends with Jim in almost like a captain's.
I think he's joined the academy.
Yeah.
There's
he's in
something...
a uniform of some sort, and the cops are like
dress
the 2
uniform.
cops who
like a
pulled
dress
him
uniform. Yeah.
over in the beginning.
Droids.
Are like praising him, and then he looks out to the sky, and there's like one star that's sparkling.
Did you know? But the clouds are shaped like silver.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yes, it's
oh
and
my
the
gosh,
star
I
is
didn't
his
get.
eye.
Well, then that makes more sense as to why that star was
It's
sparkling.
silver
I
space.
did not see that.
So that was the idea of the sequel. Was Jim goes off to the academy, has a love interest, because there wasn't. You notice there wasn't one in this movie, and then like Silver gets kind of involved, and they have to work with Silver to take out Ironbeard, who was supposed to be played by Willem Dafoe,
Which would have been great.
Well, I mean, yeah, Willem Dafoe's great and everything, but there was a firefight. Like that was the plan.
Yeah.
So
that's the movie.
That's the movie. So, Travis, we ask these questions every single episode.
Let's do it.
How was the princess? I believe we're gonna say the princess in this case was Jim.
That seems fair. Yeah.
And Jim stunk.
None of us liked Jim.
He was.
It sounds like his source material was not good, but again, they could have modified some things to make him more likable, I think.
Here's the thing. First of all, I think his arc was from slightly annoying to fine. Yeah. So by the end, he was fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go with that, I guess.
Whenever you eat like you make a sandwich on white bread. No one talks about how the white bread is their favorite part, but you need that white bread for the sandwich to work. I think every other character is all the wonderful ingredients in this sandwich, and he's the white bread. He's good to keep the sandwich together, but other than that, like, whatever.
I mean, and they just did him wrong with his face. That's all I'm going to say. They did him wrong.
Now, you say he has a very small forehead.
I don't say
And then
he has a very
his
small
eyebrows-
forehead. He has a small forehead.
And his eyebrows go up. His eyebrows go up to his hairline.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever he raises his eyebrow, they just disappear.
Because look, your forehead should be like a third of your face, and Jim's is like an eighth.
So the next question is, how was the prince? And this is kind of our weird thing because I think the prince is Silver.
I think he
Yeah.
is too. Yeah.
I
But-
think Silver is marketed as the villain, but he's not the villain. Do we rate him as a villain?
I don't know. I don't think we do.
They really work hard to make him he's a troubled character, but he's not a villain.
He's the antagonist who becomes
he's, because I would say in Muppets Treasure Island, which I'm sorry, Travis, I know you haven't seen it, but I know you're going to watch it as soon as we're done with this.
Yeah.
But I would say that Silver is a villain.
Yes.
This Silver isn't. I like, yes,
Yeah.
he's working with the crew, but like you said, Travis, they do so much to make him not only likable, but make him support Jim and be there for Jim. And we never see him physically hurt Jim, physically hurt any other characters. It's really hard for me to say Silver's the
Beats up Mr.
villain.
Scroop.
He does.
Yeah.
Who would be the only person that's like a villain.
Yes.
But I
Yeah.
think maybe this is one of the weaknesses of the story that they're telling, is that there is this moral ambiguity to almost all of the people that you see the most. You know, Jim's kind of a dick, and he becomes maybe less of a dick. And, you know, Silver's kind of a bad person, but actually maybe he makes good choices by the end.
Yeah.
So you don't
Yeah.
have that clear-cut storytelling.
I argue that I think the strongest part of this, though, is Silver's story. I think him.
It is.
I
interesting,
agree, but
I
do
agree with you.
you
It's
call,
not.
do you call him a villain in
I
this
think
telling of the story?
I wanted my point going to this. I will say this was like, I'm going to convince them to rank Silver as a villain, and I'm out on that. I think he's absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think.
I think it's an interesting story because I think the next movie he's clearly like gonna start a good guy, and it's gonna be, if there was a next movie, it would be Jim convincing everyone else. No, he's fine. Like that would be
Is the
Yeah.
villain our own self-doubt? Like, that's kind of where I'm left with this movie, is that it's
We'll get there.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to. I think we have to rank Scroop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so
I
too.
think Scroop, which is sad
Scroop.
because I believe he was in the sidekick henchman bracket.
He was.
on
Well,
a while ago.
I think
Well,
this is
you
just
didn't
a
know.
weakness in the movie. That's what I'm going to say. It's a weakness in the movie.
Yes. How are the sidekicks and henchmen? I believe referring to Mr. Zoff as a sidekick or henchman is diminutive of the importance of his
I
character
do-
and the story.
I think we've
He's
talked.
perfect.
Okay.
Morph is
I
clearly a
think-
sidekick.
Yes, I really liked Morph a lot, and I think we've talked about the pirates, the ones we liked
Yes.
and didn't like, but I think the strongest sidekick is Morph.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Amelia, if you call her, she's kind of a sidekick. She's a side
yeah.
character.
I guess, yeah.
I think she's also
I
very
wish
cool.
she was more of not a side character because
Yes.
she was so great, but yeah.
Favorite musical number? There's only really one option, and that's the Google.
I didn't
Yes.
care for it.
Is
It could have
montage.
been instrumental and
Yeah.
it would have been fine.
I think that was their attempt to be like, we got to put something cool in here for the kids. And
Yeah.
it really came off that way. So let's get the guys from City of Angels. How does it hold up? Female character agency. I gotta admit, I don't think they had a very good one in this one. It was the mom character. It was one female pirate. Amelia was great, but that's it.
But Amelia would have to carry that for the
And
film.
Amelia was great. And I'm gonna say Amelia, she was great. But she was great in a very male presenting role, right? She didn't
Yes.
bring
Yes.
anything feminine necessarily to that role that was then celebrated for being feminine. She was great
Yes.
because she presented as female, but was successful in a male world, and that was kind of it. It was a one note.
And then also, once she got hurt, then we
She
didn't
was
really
out.
see her
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, she's gone.
So, yeah.
Drinking and smoking, I don't remember anything.
I
in here.
think
Really
Silver
cut it
has
out.
a pipe at one point, but I don't know that we see smoke come out of it.
There's
He's like
yeah,
holding
booze
it.
everywhere in that story. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Lots of rum.
Well, they keep getting drunk, and that's why they keep getting knifed at night by Benjamin Gunn, because they get wasted, and then he just slips in and
Yeah.
Takes him out.
Ethnic representation. I think it's a pretty white cast.
as far as voice cast goes. Yeah.
And it's, it's hard to say because it's like there was a lot of species representation.
Yeah.
Guns and firearms, there's swords, there's laser guns,
there's
but like
explosions, those cannons.
It's kind of like loose laser fire. There's not a lot. Like it didn't come off as rough anyway. Like it's cool because they're like flintlock pistols, but they clearly are shooting lasers.
Yeah, I mean, and you never see somebody. Do we ever see somebody die from a shot?
No, we never see
So
any.
that-
They all float off to space.
Yeah,
That's
so
really when anyone
but I
dies.
think that diminishes the power of the weapons in this, right?
Yes.
I think
it's just like I think Star Wars is more, of an issue because you actually see hits, right?
Yes.
I do think that it kind of, because of the way that death is portrayed here, if it is even death, I do think that it makes some of the stakes feel a little bit lower because you just don't have your own logical certainty that that's the end result of what had happened.
Well, I keep making the joke that like Mr. Zoff floated away, but like easily, like if for some reason one of them floated back, I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to write that in. I mean, and that's literally what happens to Sam the Eagles. Mr. Arrow is spoiler alert. He comes back. They convince him that he needs to check the rowboats, and he's like, "Oh, it's very proficient," and he floats away, and then he comes back later.
And we've already established that everyone can breathe in space, right? Like everyone can breathe in space. That's not a problem in this in the way that they've built their universe.
If you told me someone came back, like if at the end Mr. Arrow like floated back, I'd be like, well, that's kind of dumb, but I wouldn't be like, what?
That's
But
impossible.
I will say Mr. Arrow and Mr. Scroops, when they go off, the horror on their face and the scream from Scroop makes you believe that they're done for.
Nothing good happens next. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Nothing good happens in a black hole. That's what I've always said. All right. So we are going. Do you know the villain ranking? Have you heard it on other episodes?
Tell me
Travis?
about the villain ranking.
Well, listeners, we will be right back as I explain the villain ranking to Travis. Listeners, we've talked about it. We went back and forth. Do we rank Silver? Do we not? I think we're going to go ahead. We had a passionate discussion. Battle lines were drawn. We're back. Travis is an expert on the infallible scientific ranking, and we are now going to rank Mr. Scroop. So, frightening for Mr. Scroop, 1 through 5. Travis? Or we'll start with Tara since we're kind of hopping in. Tara?
I think he's pretty scary.
I think he's a 4.
I think so. Because he's so different. And we'll talk about that in design, but he's so... Lady is wanting a belly rub. He's designed so different. He's very, like, intense because his whole body is, like, hovering over Jim. And he does kill Mr. Arrow and then also blames it on Jim and wants to kill Jim in the beginning, but Silver saves him. I think he's a 4.
I agree. I almost put him at a 5, and I'm debating back that, but I think he's definitely a 4.
I agree. I think he's a 4. And I think, like you said, Tara, when we get to 5, it'll be clear why. But, like, they have gone out of their way to visually tell you that this is a different kind of character. Yes. And they've used a whole bunch of tools that we always associate with evil intent or evil people to get you to believe that. Surprisingly, though, he doesn't present as queer, which is like a step forward. So I'll take that.
Funny. 1 across the board.
Not funny at all.
Not funny at all.
1.
I'm trying to think if he even tried a joke.
I don't think he did.
I will say, on the whole, right, this movie was not particularly funny.
That's true. I think
there was some clever dialogue, but there weren't moments where you were like, "Oh, this is actually really funny." It was just like, "Okay, that was sure."
Yeah, I think the humor. Yeah, I think the humor comes from Morph, and there's not a lot of humor there, and it's very quick moments. Yeah.
Fierce. I don't think he's got much like drag queen energy or anything.
I will say he does have an intensity to him.
He does. This is also, the more I think of it, this is our queer coding like subject typically.
Yeah.
Because I think they deserve points for that because that was what Disney did, I don't want to say so well, but you know what I mean, for a while.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he has any. He does have a little bit of intensity.
To me, he has an intensity, so I'm going to give him a little higher than a 1. I'm going to give him a 2.
You're going to give him a 2?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Travis?
Yeah, I think I get that, a 1 or a 2 would work for me. He doesn't really spend enough time on screen like being himself to have the opportunity to express that, because he's always kind of like serving a purpose. He's moving the story somewhere. You don't really get that same time that you do with Silver, where he has a lot of time to just kind of like be a person, be a character on screen. Scroop's always kind of moving. I'm gonna say 1.
Okay, I'm gonna do the same. Effective. Now he doesn't get the treasure from Treasure Planet, but I do think he deserves a point for killing Mr. Arrow.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because that forces them. It makes it easier for them to have a mutiny without Mr. Arrow there.
So 2 or a 3.
I'm gonna go with a 3 because he does the mutiny. The mutiny happens.
I think there's that, but
and
I also think
he pushes Silver into talking poorly about Jim, which also forces things forward.
I'm gonna give him a 3.
I'm gonna give him a 3.
I think killing a major character is a pretty big deal. Like, I agree with that. Design. He gets a 4 from me because I really like his design. You were talking about this, like, how do we make him seem a villain? Well, he's Jafar's colors.
Yeah.
And his eyes are like this glowing yellow that's kind of
based
intense.
on a spider, right? We don't have good cultural associations with spiders. When you see that, that already tells you this is an other and this is bad. Yes. So you're already getting that message because all the other people are sort of soft and squishy and they have very human-shaped forms. And then you have this spider turn up that's trying to kill people and you're like, hey, that one's bad.
I want to point out that he also looks like a character from Fraggle Rock episode called The Poison Cackler, which was a monster they were all afraid of, and I had nightmares about as a child.
No.
So that
you'll have to do a side-by-side if you're able to look up that character without getting upset.
So I think a 4. I think he gets a 4. And I think it could have been...
Agreed.
But a 4, yeah.
4s across the board. All right. Go Away Heat. I think maybe a 2 just because he was kind of like a little ooky. Like I give him a 2 mostly because I don't think he was devoid of Go Away Heat.
Yeah, I didn't have strong feelings with him on the screen or off the screen. I don't know.
So you can give him a 1.
I think I'm gonna give him a 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm probably a 1. I'm just trying to think because his role is so functional that you just don't respond to him as necessarily a personality because he's just kind of doing his thing. You're like, okay. So yeah, I think a 1 for me. Yeah.
I'm gonna give him a 2 just because that Poison Cackler association.
That's
fine.
And then Yes Factor, I had a 1 as well.
Yeah, you're never excited.
I'll have a 1. I was not. Yeah.
All right, so he is a 15.7.
Okay, so where does that put him?
Now Tara gets to see me go all the way down the rankings. Oh, he's actually not as low as I thought he would be.
What?
So he's tied with a bunch of. He's in good company here.
He is 44th.
Right above Aunt Sarah from Lady and the Tramp.
And right below Monstro from Pinocchio.
That's fine. He can go there.
Well, they didn't do a lot with him, but they did it. What they did do, they were clear about. So I think that's where it comes through. Like you knew who he was, you knew what he was about. It just wasn't very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Oh, I guess we have one more question. I almost always forget this.
I know.
And that is, do we put this one in a clamshell on our shelf as part of our collection, or do we lock it away in the vault forever? And those are the only 2 options,
I have a
Tara.
drawer.
You
the
don't have a
listeners know
drawer.
I have a drawer.
There's no
I have
drawer.
an in-between.
There's no middle ground. You're getting rid of it, or you're keeping it as a place of glory.
We can let our guest go first.
You've said flat out you're throwing away the DVD when this is over.
I am. I don't think this is one I'm ever coming back to. There is too much else out there in the world to spend the hour and 40 minutes doing that I don't think that I would come back to this one.
Well, not me. I don't have a lot to do, and I would watch this movie again. I very much enjoy it. I think I definitely would 100% fast forward through the montage scene. But I like it. I stand up for this movie.
I'm in a hard spot because I feel like when we first came back, I was like, yeah, I'd watch it again. And now the more that we've talked about it,
you feel done.
I feel like I've explored it. For me, I'd love another movie with Silver and the Captain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right.
You know, I don't know that I need both of them in the same movie.
Doppler gets kidnapped and they have to go.
Yeah, I like those characters, but I don't know if that's enough for me to watch this one again. And again, it kept making me want to watch Muppets Treasure Island. So I think if I want to watch a Treasure Island movie, I think I'm going to go to the Muppets before I'm going to go to this. So
you're going to lock this away in the vault.
In the drawer.
There's no drawer.
Okay.
You can't just have a drawer.
Well, because in the vault is Song of the South, and I don't think
it's not the same vault. It's your vault. Your vault does not have Song of the South in it. Song of the South does not exist in our lexicon.
Okay, it's in the vault.
Walt's head, however, is in the vault.
Okay.
He's looking over all our videos we don't want to watch again.
Got it.
Well, Travis, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. As always, we ask our guests if they would like to plug something, whether that's a personal project, a piece of media maybe you have been enjoying other than Treasure Planet lately, and or some just general sentiment you want to put out there in the world. Travis, please feel free to plug away.
You know, I will plug a joint favorite of ours, Ryan. Because there may be folks out there who have not come across it yet, and I think that's a shame. And I don't know when this is going to go out to folks, but I'll say it's generally fall-ish appropriate, so that'll work. But if you've not seen Over the Garden Wall, folks,
okay,
I thought you were going
to pitch La Brea, and I was like, Travis, by the time this comes out, that show could be canceled.
You know, I wouldn't do that to anybody. I think that we're doing what we need to do with that show, and it doesn't need a wider viewing.
Yes.
But Over the Garden Wall, which is Hulu and HBO Max now, so you can also,
yes.
if you got HBO Max, you can see it on that. I highly recommend folks see that because it is very enjoyable and very seasonally appropriate.
It's spooky. It's not super scary. It's a little more it's interesting because I think it's a little scarier than you believe watching a little bit of it, but it's that good. It's also animated, so it fits well in for this show. We'll probably watch it sometime. It's fun, and it's only like 6 or 7 episodes.
Yeah, it's quick.
Yeah, it's a good show. I'm gonna make Tara watch it after this.
Yeah, I've not seen it.
I mean, I don't even want to describe it. I think
no, you gotta go out,
check it out on Hulu.
Go watch it, folks.
It's very cool. Well, thank you, Travis, and thank you, listeners, for listening. As always, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell a friend about our podcast. And we will be back next time with our next big episode. We'll be Brother Bear. We'll have Carley, the maker of our cover art,
logo,
of our logo, will be on to discuss Brother Bear with us. Until then, thank you guys so much for listening.
All right, take care, listeners. Thanks for listening to Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
If you want to tell us your favorite Disney villain and why it's guest on, send us an email at trprincessdiaries@gmail.com.
Or you can send a tweet about how great Maleficent is to @TRPDiaries.
Check out our Facebook group by searching for Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries are available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, and many more.
Wherever you hear us, please be our knight in shining armor and give us a 5-star review.
Thanks again, and until next time, remember to always live happily ever after.